Snake, I've got your mission briefing ready for you. We've got the go-ahead from TWG to enact mission Virtuous podcast. We've had reports that folks are looking to hear just what the deal with Metal Gear Solid 3 is. It's what's called a video game, and one that apparently came out 20 years ago. We think you've had plenty of time to absorb all the wild things that Hideo Kojima was doing in the game, so your mission is this. Play the game, record a podcast about it, and release it June 16th of 2024. We're all counting on you, Snake. Get it done.
What a thrill, with darkness and silence through the night. What a thrill, I'm searching and I'll melt into you. What a fear in my heart, but you're so supreme. I give my life, not for honor, but for you. In my time, there'll be no one else. Crime, it's the way I fly to you. I'm still in a dream, snake eater. Someday you go through the rain, and someday you'll feed on a tree frog. It's ordeal, the trial to survive for the day we see new light. I give my life, not for honor, but for you. In my time, there'll be no one else. Crime, it's the way I fly to you. I'm still in a dream, snake eater. I'm still in a dream, snake eater.
Wow, that's really nice.
Had to start it off.
I would say welcome to Video Game Podtimism, the optimist video game variety show where two best friends talk about the wonderful world of gaming. My name is Chase.
And my name is David.
But I think you already did that with one
Well,
sentence
one go. Not even a
Yeah.
sentence, just a term.
Yeah, a phrase, a turn of phrase.
Mhm.
Wow, we're here. We're doing Metal Gear Solid 3 in its entirety.
Yeah, this is a hotly anticipated episode, I feel like.
Yeah, because like Metal Gear Solid 3 was, I think for a lot of people, the Metal Gear Solid game that got them into the series, or
Yes.
like for a lot of people also is like the game still that they're like, this is the one, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it stands the test of time, I think. I probably would put myself in both of those camps to
Sure.
to
Yeah.
just come out with it right at the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I like my just, yeah, not to bury my lead either, but like, I think parts of it are exceptional and other parts have like feel exceptionally 2005 or whatever
Oh, sure.
it is.
Yeah.
Which we'll get into, but still like, it's a really interesting game. And I think the cultural impact of it, at least for people who play games, is very present, like even now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're recording this and like this is just after Summer Games Fest has taken place. And like, there was a fair amount of coverage about Metal Gear Solid Delta, the remake of 3, which is like, I think hotly anticipated. I think a lot of people are like very excited about what that's going to bring.
I mean, after playing 3 and then seeing that trailer, I mean, man, does it look good, because this game, I mean, we'll probably get into a little bit more, but the color palette is it's not the best thing about the game.
It's very of its time.
Yes.
Like it's very 2004, very like we're trying to be gritty, aka the color palette we're working with is kind of muted grays and browns.
Aren't army fatigues cool? How about a whole entire game that looks like them?
I agree that like the visuals of the remake look really incredible. We got a question about the remake later, and I sort of I'd love to speak a little bit more to it then, because it's like very much a mixed bag for me a little bit of like, wow, this is really cool that this is being updated in this way, and like also I feel a little bad about them kind of just kicking Hideo to the curb and being like, we're gonna remake it without you. And like again, I think that happens fairly frequently with like other studios, right? Like I don't think a lot of the people who were involved in the Shadow of the Colossus remake were there originally, but like there wasn't the kind of like bad terms that the studio who is making it ended on. With the person who is like, for all intents and purposes, the face of this series. So I don't know. It's a whole thing, but at the same time, like it looks good. It looks fun. So you know, who knows? So for anybody listening, I think the structure of this will be that we're kind of going to go over like just our feelings about it then and now, a couple of just quick hot stats, and then just an overview. And a lot of this is going to be not spoilery. So fear not that we're not going to blast through spoilers quite yet, but after that we will kind of just walk through the events of the game, which obviously will spoil the whole thing. So if you're worried about that, you will have plenty of time to, you know, dip and come back whenever you do play this, because I wonder if there's a contingent of people who are like waiting for the remake as their entry point into the series.
I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised, especially if, I mean, the game has a reputation for being somewhat difficult to get into. And so if there's some quality of life upgrades in this remake that they do, then it could be very enticing for a lot of folks to get into it there. Yeah,
I saw that one of the previews they talked about, I think it was today, where the dude who's kind of handling the development, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he and David Hayter were having a conversation, and he had said that there are two kind of control schemes in the game. One of them is the classic one that looks pretty much like the regular Metal Gear Solid 3, and then there's a updated one that looks a lot more like what that came out in 2024 looks like. It's very behind the shoulder.
Right. Control scheme wise? Or like
control scheme and camera wise.
And camera wise. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Did they give you the option to have the stationary camera as well still?
Actually, don't know. Well, so I think the classic integrates some of that. But I don't know the full extent. They just kind of said like, here's the name that we're giving it, but we'll see once it comes out, and
gotcha.
You know, see what they actually got cooking there. So yeah, fear not about spoilers quite yet. We'll let you know when that comes. I would like recommend kind of steering clear of spoilers if you haven't played this. I think like a lot of Metal Gear Solid games are games that I wouldn't say like are less good the second time. I think they're still very good, but the twists and turns are kind of part of it.
The narrative is a big part of the game. Yeah.
And especially the kind of like double crossing, whose side are you on kind of stuff in this one is very present. Yeah. And like, I think that is a little bit less so in the other ones. It's definitely still there, but like,
I mean, in number 2, there was like double cross, triple cross, quadruple cross by Ocelot, which was crazy.
I mean, he's a little scamp in every game he's in. There's no amount of crossing this dude won't do.
Yeah.
But like, I feel like most characters in this game, you're kind of like, I don't know whose side you're on.
Yeah.
Except for, you know, the kind of the major bad guys and Snake, I guess, of his own accord. But, you know, we'll get into exactly what happens there. So, yeah. And like, I'm usually a dude who is kind of spoiler agnostic. I usually don't really care. Like, it's usually about like how they do it more than what they do. But even still, I think it is pretty fun if you don't know a lot of the spoilers about this to kind of go in and be like surprised when the twists happen or surprised when the turns are taken.
I was about to say, I do think it is a big part of the fun of the game.
Yeah, I'm with you. Okay, well, why don't we get into it just a little bit here?
Let's do it.
So just like a few stats about this game. I don't have any reviews from Joe Video of this one, but I do have just some quick stats about it. It came out
quick stats,
different thing. It came out November 17th of 2004, which is like sort of shocking to the modern mind because this is 3 years after 2 came out.
Right. Yeah.
Which, like, I think to a modern development cycle, you're like, dude, 3 years? That is light speed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because like you'll get something announced at Summer Games Fest 4 years ago, and they're like, "Hey, we're barely in pre-alpha right now." You know, like it just the life cycle of these things is so much longer, and so it feels very bizarre for that to be the case. But this was also like, I think MGS2 was definitely a hit, and I think that there was a lot of money being poured in by Konami, the folks who like built this, into this series of like, you got to make us some more money with this one.
Yeah.
Especially because like Kojima had said, Hideo Kojima, the like main kind of like producer, writer, director of most of these games, he at the end of 2 was like, that's the end of the series. And so I have to imagine, yes, he said it almost every single one at the end of these video games. He's like, that is it, we're done. And so like for him to come back for 3 and 4 and like a little bit of 5, they I have to assume that they were just either putting an immense amount of pressure on him or just throwing boatloads of money. I'm not sure which, but
he's like, hey, I can make something else up. Let's go.
It's kind of strange actually, because like so much of the flavor of Metal Gear is the kind of ridiculous, wild ways that it connects back to itself. And especially the kind of like repeated rhythmic beats that it hits of like, we're always going to have this kind of thing at the beginning and this kind of thing towards the end of it. And they all feel distinct, but like it almost is better the more times you play a story like it, because it like kind of reinforces the themes of like, you know, these things are different but the same also in different timelines and shit. And so
shows the permanence of what he's discussing.
Yeah, exactly.
The
that
cycle.
Like these things, yes, the cycles of it kind of repeat from one place to another. And so like it kind of is beneficial that they made a handful of these and they could make that point over and over again. But also, I feel for Hideo of being like, I don't want to make any more Metal Gear. I want to make Death Stranding. But in 2004, they said, no, you're going to make more Metal Gear.
He's been trying to make a Strand type game for a long time.
For so long, yeah. I bet there was a version of Metal Gear Solid 3 where there was like some weird online shit. Where he was like, I wonder if I could like, people could leave supplies for each other or traps or something.
Leave a ration for them.
Yeah, something like that.
A snake in a cage.
I bet. Yeah, exactly. I bet he was thinking like, how could we do this? But so as I mentioned, this was made by Konami, still headed up by Kojima, and like the kind of like major top titles, like, you know, producers, writers, programmers, all that shit. A lot of it is largely the same as the group who made Metal Gear Solid 2. It's like mostly the same people. Yoji Shinkawa is back, the artist that you will definitely recognize his art if you have seen any of it. It's the kind of like very stark shadows and lines
shadowy
and stuff like that. Yeah, it looks really phenomenal. And I think that mostly comes through in the concept art, but you definitely see the character designs in the game and everything. But yeah, the concept art for these games is just amazing. It looks so good.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think the only other thing worth like mentioning here at the top is just that like the game was widely received very well at the time. Like people really, really responded to it. And as we were sort of gesturing at earlier, this is like the one, I think, for a lot of people that got them into the series. And I think Subsistence too, because you could kind of control the camera, which was a big problem, I think, for somebody who wasn't familiar with the camera system in 1 and 2. And like, understandably, that's a much more modern way to play the game.
Yeah.
It's like really hard to do a sneaking game when you can't see that far in front of you.
Exactly. And Subsistence being the re-release of Metal Gear Solid 3 that they did like a year and a half later, where they gave you control of the camera. Yeah.
Yeah, there was like the original Snake Eater release, and then Subsistence. Yeah, I think you're right. It's like about a year afterwards.
Yeah, because that's when I got it. Because I'd always wanted to play the Metal Gear Solid games, but I just couldn't. I could not get my teenage brain around the stationary camera and the tank controls. And then Hideo smiled upon me and said, "Hey,
this is your
control
game.
That camera, baby." I was like, "Yes, sir. You got it."
You saluted. And
I stood up and saluted, a single tear going down my cheek.
Oh my God. So yeah, that's most of the kind of groundwork here. I sort of suspect, I don't remember exactly, but we had to have talked a little bit about the development of Metal Gear Solid 2, I mean. And I think the most important thing being there that like Hideo Kojima was like, I don't want to make any more of these. And I wouldn't say you can feel that super strong here, but like I think that there's this
overlying theme in a lot of these games, and this one especially, of like a soldier having to do their duty.
Yeah.
You know, and like they don't get to control the decisions they're making at all. And they're kind of just at the whims of these like larger power structures than themselves.
Yeah.
And like, you know, I don't think you have to jump very far to see like the situation that Hideo Kojima was in, and also the situation that Snake is in here, where like, you know, this is his first mission and he's like not chipper, but he's excited to do it. And it's like, you know, little Brad-Ed and bushy-tailed. And then, you know, the end of the game is a hard moment for him.
Sure,
you know?
is. Yeah.
Does some stuff he doesn't want to do. And he very much feels forced into that. And so I think that like, yeah, you can feel a little bit of the tension there.
So Kojima is calling out his bosses in this game a little bit, you're saying?
His boss is
the Cobras.
Yeah, is Konami the Cobras or the Volgan? Who knows?
Each member of the Cobra unit is based after one of like the vice presidents at Konami.
Can you imagine? That'd be so wild. So yeah, I think that's most of it. So why don't we talk a little bit about like how this series or this game specifically, like what your response was to it at the time, and then just kind of large overview of like how it felt playing this time.
I'll talk about my experience playing Subsistence.
Right. Yeah.
I loved this game when I first played it. It was such a unique and refreshing experience. There's really nothing else like Metal Gear Solid game.
Yeah.
I've played a lot of games and I can't really think of anything off the top of my head that even kind of comes close in just how it is presented, like the whole package working together of this very complex story, this sometimes tight, sometimes wonky gameplay, but that is still so satisfying to engage in. A story that can vacillate between being bafflingly strange and weird to kind of heart-wrenchingly sad and beautiful and poignant.
Earnest.
Yeah. That it just kind of shook me. It shook me to my core when I played this game the first time back in 2005 for Subsistence. And one of the few games that I played through multiple times in this era of my life. I don't typically play through games multiple times, but this one and definitely Resident Evil 4 and Jak and Daxter 2 I played multiple times through.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that, but I didn't know that little detail.
Jak 2?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I played a lot of Jak 2. It was the closest thing, one of the closest things I could get to Grand Theft Auto. So that definitely scratched an itch for me. But I loved that game. That game was real good. So yeah, I really enjoyed this game when it first came out. Yeah. Going back to it nowadays, I still think it is really, really good. Yeah. Yeah. The controls are still wonky, I think. Yeah. There are some detection issues with the sneaking that can be a little wonky sometimes. The controls are just weird by today's standards too. Back then, when people were still kind of trying to figure out how best to use a controller, it was not quite so clear that this is a strange system that has been set up. But yeah, my brain has just been streamlined to think about gaming on a controller in a different way, and I just found myself feeling like I really had to think about what I was doing, but I also feel like that's not necessarily a bad thing. It almost feels like controlling a Metal Gear, a Metal Gear, Grand Theft Auto or Red Dead Redemption, right? Yes. It almost feels like I'm not so much like piloting this character as I am like giving this character commands and then they do the thing that I am asking them to do, which is a very specific type of controlling a character and gaming.
You have to pilot the Arthur Morgan again, Shinji.
Exactly. I'm not synced up. My sync is low right now. Which I think really works well if you have a very good main character. Yeah. Because then it's like, oh, I'm experiencing their story. So I think it also gets away with that. But overall, I think that the story is still great. Yeah. I think the characters are still some of the best in the series. The setting, I love the setting. I love a good Cold War. I love the jungle. Jungle is still really good. I don't feel like there's many sneaky jungle games. Once again, not many people have done it. And I think that with my eyes now, I can really appreciate how kind of masterfully crafted the jungle portions of the game are, from like a sneaking and just giving you different things to options of how to attack a situation point of view as well. Yeah, it really is just a smorgasbord of opportunities for you to engage with the game in. So yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it almost feels like it's not the same thing, but it's like almost approaching an immersive sim.
Immersive sim. Yeah, I see what you're saying there for sure.
Yeah, that it's like approaching that area where it's like you have kind of a ton of options with how to approach any given situation, and the game offers you a bunch of different like avenues with which to do that as well. And so like you get into these like arenas where it's like, here's the field that I need to cross and there's 5 guards in front of me. Like, how do I get over there?
Yeah. I can just try to sneak. I can shoot them. I can try to lure one of them away, leave out a magazine for them to look at.
Yeah. It's very good.
What about you, Chase? How did it hit you back then, and how's it hit you now?
Yeah. So I was by this point already a Metal Gear Solid freak.
Yes.
Like so into it. I was just like,
you were speedrunning MGS2.
I was trying to beat MGS2 as fast as I could.
Yeah.
Like I was just so in on all of that, and like, you know, full honesty and transparency, I don't think I really got a lot of what was going on at the time. Like it was just so dense and talking about shit that I just didn't have the language for into, that a lot of it was over my head, but the way that I understood it was just like, this game is unsettling in a way that not many games are, even scary games. And I really liked that. I liked the kind of like whiplash between it being this very kind of self-serious stealth game to a very jokey and bizarre video game with such strange characters in it, back to being like real world social commentary and like talking about the internet and AI and all this sort of shit. Like that, the back and forth there in 2 really got me. And so I was like kind of in already, and I had played through 1 like when that had come out. But was even younger at that point, and I think all of that was over my head, other than like, Snake is so fucking cool, and like Metal Gear rocks, and like that's kind of my understanding of it. And so when 3 came out, gosh, how old was I? 14 by this point. Like, you know, I'm thinking a little bit more than I was when Metal Gear Solid 2 comes out, and I remember playing this game over the course of like a weekend. Like I just flew through it.
Dang.
Because it's like, it's long, but it's not that long.
Yeah. I finished in like 14 hours, I think, this time around.
Yeah, about that. And I think, you know, having the luxury of hindsight of like, oh, I remember this level, and like, I know what I need to do here, definitely shortened that a little bit. But I was just like totally obsessed, had to play the whole thing. And like, my feeling at the time was like, that was a really good video game. And I think this is probably one of the better versions of Metal Gear up to this point. That it feels better in almost every way. Most of the mechanics are similar to 2, but mostly improved. And I think that at the time, we've talked about this before, that there was this hunger among people who were like, I don't know if consuming or making games, I'm not sure which, but maybe a combination of both, that mechanical progress was a thing that always needed to happen. Yeah. Of like, we need to change something to be a little bit more complex.
What's the new thing you're doing in this sequel?
Yes. Like, especially at this era, like the 2004, probably till the end of 2010, it was like everything needed to be pushing some kind of mechanical boundary, whether or not that was like visual or just, you know, making things more complex. You kind of see that with the arc of like Grand Theft Auto 3 to 5 of just like, we have to make everything in this game and the map needs to be bigger and better and like that kind of shit. I don't think Metal Gear is super guilty of that, but you do see a lot of kind of incremental shit being added, right? So like the camouflage system is new.
The healing yourself, eating.
Yes. Yeah. Having to like, you know, actually pull the bullets out of yourself and like apply bandages and shit like that. Yeah. And the eating to make sure that you're not hungry or whatever, that you wouldn't really see a lot of those mechanics come back up until like the survival genre showed back up, and, you know, Minecraft and shit like that was really popular. But it's cool to see it implemented here because it still feels very bizarre. Like the eating and the healing and all that shit. It is more complex than the stuff that was going on in 2, but I think it does serve the feeling of like, I'm out here on my own and I have to make it work, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, at the time I was like really into it, but it was also a game that I didn't return to very often. I think just like something about the end of the game felt kind of arduous for me, of like emotionally kind of tiring. And then also like it just took a long time at the end there.
The game does take a long time at the end.
Yeah. And like, I think that's probably made worse by the fact that I played this in a very short amount of time. So like it was probably Sunday night and I'm like, dude, come on, I got to go to school tomorrow. Like we really need to wrap this shit up.
Land is playing, Kojima.
Yeah. So yeah, that's mostly how I felt about it at the time. I think going back to it, a lot of different feelings, I will say, not like bad or worse, but just it's landing for me very differently and in different parts. Like I think doing this series of covering the other Metal Gear games. We've done 1 and 2 now. I think playing through it, it's a lot of fun to kind of chart the similarities and differences between these series, and like, how things are acting, or, how they're playing for us. And that's not something I really had that much context for at the time. Like, I had played 2 a lot, but I wasn't really thinking about like what is so similar about this one, or what is, where are the places they're deciding to make it different? What does that matter?
Yeah.
I was just kind of like so focused on the narrative that I wasn't comparing that kind of stuff. Whereas this time I am. And I think a lot of that's really fun to look at, of like the naming, all the naming being bizarre in this one, just like it is in 2, and how that was kind of influenced by, I think we had talked about City of Glass when we talked about 2, and how it was this kind of influential piece on Hideo Kojima, where like, it's the story of somebody who lives in New York and they get obsessed with this like single person, and you're not really sure, they have like the same name as the main character, but it's not their real name, and you're not really sure who's who. And like that stuff feels so present in 2 and is still present in 3, of like, is Snake's name John or Jack? People call him both names a lot, and he says John to a couple of people, and other people who should know him call him Jack, and like that kind of stuff of just like, what is happening here? Who is who? And that being intentional is very present. I really like that stuff. I think I like the confusion of Metal Gear, and I think it's intentional a lot of the time. Like, there's almost always something being hammered on of like almost misinformation or disinformation, or like in this one, it's a lot of, references to, you're not going to get the real story in the history books. Like, things were very different on the ground, that kind of stuff. And so, the misinformation almost serves a different narrative device at this point, where in 2, it was about the internet and AI, whereas this one is about like textbooks and just like, how whoever wins a war can typically kind of shape whatever narrative they want to, but coming from similar places. And so like all of that works pretty well. I was surprised that the game is still pretty fun. Like, it's this is a 20-year-old game at this point, and so like it's a lot of games from that era don't age very well, and we love those games for sure. That's a thing that we appreciate on this cast, but most of it is still very fun. It's still a very fun stealth game, and like works really well in a lot of ways. I think like a lot of the stuff, except for one thing, a lot of the stuff that I in comparison to 2 don't like is just totally taste, right? Like, I'm not crazy about Cold War stuff. I much prefer the sci-fi approach in these games, which is, again, why I ended up liking 4 a lot, because he kind of returned to some of that. And I like the wackiness of 2, of just like how bizarre and almost like intentionally confusing so much of it was. I like a lot of that. Whereas compared to this one, I think 3 is relatively understandable. Like, you can mostly
amazingly
get it.
enough, relatively understandable is the best
Like,
we can get in a Metal Gear game, huh?
Yes, yeah. Like, you can get like 90% of the way there, right?
Yeah.
Like, you'll every now and then you'll catch something and be like, wait, well, like, what is that? But for the most part, it's like,
low.
yeah. But like, I think I get who the philosophers were, and I think I get who like Volgan is, and like what was going on with Ocelot and Ava and Snake and all this shit and Zero. So like, all of that feels understandable, and it makes sense why that would be someone's entry into the series of like. 2 is got way too much shit going on. It's very referential to Metal Gear Solid 1. And so like, if 3 kind of strips a lot of that back and still gives you the kind of intentionally maybe confusing stuff, but not too much, it's understandable why that would be good. But I think just like taste wise, I prefer that stuff. This game it misses pretty hard on its understanding of like sexualization and like,
you've heard about the male gaze. How about there's a whole button for
there's
it?
a button devoted
An actual
to the
male gaze button.
There's a lot of scenes in this, and I think like, okay, so in the game, sometimes in a cutscene you can press R1 and you can see what Snake is seeing.
Yeah.
And a couple times this is very cool because you get different information as a player, like when you're from what you're seeing in the cutscene versus what Snake is seeing.
Yeah.
There's specifically a thing with the sorrow later in the game that's like cool and adds to it and like makes you feel like, wow, I'm smart for having looked through Snake's eyes and like this is giving me a new perspective. But there's also a lot of times where it's just press R1 to oogle at Ava is most of what's going on in a scene. And like, it's just not as present in 1 or 2. Like, there's kind of references in 1 to Snake being like kind of a hornball and like hitting a little bit on Naomi and shit like that. And that's like not great, but it's like largely done after the first like hour or so. It's just kind of to establish like Snake's kind of an action hero and that's his personhood, but it's not present throughout most of the game. And in 2, I think the same thing is true. And there's like some weird sexual angst in it. With like Raiden being kind of like androgynous and that putting the 2002 player in kind of a weird position because they're like, I need my characters to be macho and huge, but you know, to have it be this like compared to Snake, relatively more androgynous character, like there's some interesting stuff going on there. And you know, the weird shit with Johnson, the president, like groping Raiden the first time he runs into him, like that stuff is weird, but it feels more like it has a purpose, right? Of like, what kind of weirdo and president would just like that be the first thing they do? I think it's speaking to how bizarre of a person Johnson is.
Also their last name.
Correct. Like there's everything in there to make it work. Right. You might not like the approach, and maybe there's another way to do it without sort of like having a, on-screen groping, but it feels a lot less like it's fan service for the player and more like this is a weird universe we live in and this is a thing that this weird guy did.
Absolutely.
Whereas in 3, it very much feels like, hey bros, we know what you want in these video games and we're going to give you a little bit of booba while you're playing this one.
The one thing that I want to comment on this, and I'm not defending at all the oogling throughout this. At 1 iota, I think it's not. It's a really bad look. But I did appreciate it. I don't know if this is intentional by Kojima or not. But at the very last end, but at the end of the game, when you're fighting with Ava on the bike, there's a moment where the two of them are having this conversation together, like, we might not make it out of this. And then you have option to press R1 and Snake's actually like looking at her in the face. And I'm like, okay, are you trying to show me like he's kind of evolving?
He's different.
He's different now. I appreciate that, but did we need to characterize it so sexually the rest of the game as well?
And I totally agree with you. And I think a lot of the part of that is that it puts the player in the driver's seat there. Because I'm totally like, Ava is a spy, right? Like her whole deal is kind of putting on these different personas, because when she hangs out with Snake, she's dressed a certain way and she looks a certain way. And when she's, kind of infiltrating Volgan's whole deal, she looks a different way. And so like, her being able to manipulate people with how she looks is part of it. She is doing that the whole game. And so I like, that makes sense to me in the same way that like Ada Wong in Resident Evil is kind of similar, of like, this is something that is part of her character. And, whether or not you love how she looks is one thing, but I think, just putting it in the camp where it is a narrative device and it is part of who she is feels better than putting it in the Dead or Alive beach volleyball approach, where it's like, we know what you want, fellas, And I agree. Like having Snake change a little bit there is cool and is good, and also speaks to like he changes a lot throughout the whole game, and so that is another helpful way to do that. But I agree, it's very weird, and like to me felt just kind of like a step back in some of its understanding of like how to treat the women in its series. And like, as time would go on, I think some of this would get better and some of it would not, like I remember the whole hype cycle around Quiet in Metal Gear Solid 5 of like, no dude, she breathes through her skin, that's why she's scantily clad.
That's some anime stuff.
It's very anime, and like,
it's very anime.
I guess that's part of her character.
No, there's a reason that she is dressing this way. Please, sir. There's a reason I made up that is why she is dressing this way. So like that I can't say that like this series has a perfect relationship with, I think especially women. Sexualization in general probably here, but like definitely the women in its series are overly sexualized. Despite like a lot of the female characters in these series, I think being very good and rounded. And like, I think Meryl is a really cool character in one and maybe another Metal Gear. And Ava too eventually goes on to like play a pretty big role in other Metal Gears. So I think that it is not a game that is just strictly only using women as objects, but it is using women as objects every now and then. So like, it ain't perfect. And also that is something that was totally not
something I paid attention to when I played it the first time.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely nothing. I caught none of that.
No, I mean, we grew up in the era of the booth babe. So
yes. Yeah.
We were definitely not
so bananas
thinking like that, unfortunately.
Yeah. It was a very strange contrast to go back and play it here.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see if they keep that in Delta.
I'm very curious to see if they keep that kind of stuff, because I played this one in the remake. And there's like a little disclaimer in the beginning of the game, like, hey, we know some of the stuff in this is outdated, but we're just preserving it for the creative intent, I guess, of the time. I'm just like, okay, I know exactly what you're talking about.
I know the scenes
you're talking about. Yeah. And I guess it is, maybe they will play up more of the angle of, okay, you're looking through Snake's eyes, and this is more of a characterization, and like, he is putty in her hand. He is not thinking clearly when she is around him, and she knows kind of how to manipulate him. If they can play up that angle of it, of like, this is a manipulation tactic and Snake is just falling for it hook and sinker, that would be more interesting. And of course, if they do it more tastefully, right? Because it's not tasteful at all in this one, right? So I would be curious to see if they can reconcile with that a little bit.
Yeah, because like I something I love about 2 is that it plays on the player's expectations of the game. Like the whole backlash to Raiden being the main character in 2 is like Hideo Kojima wanted that.
Yeah.
He wanted you to look in the mirror and be like, oh my God, I think I'm Raiden in this situation. You know, like I idolize Snake. Raiden's like somebody who's played through tons of VR missions and shit like that. And is like, I'm the perfect soldier. You can't beat me. And
Kojima
like,
just playing 4D chess over here.
Yeah. And like, I thought that was really good. And I think you could approach this the same way of like, you know, you expect all these things to be catered to you, especially like how to view sex in a video game, or like sexualization or something like that. There is a way to do that puts the player on blast, you know?
Yeah.
You know, whether or not that's like hiding critical information in the background. If you're oogling or something, like if you're too busy staring, then like you miss some critical shit, or just don't make me press R1. You know, like I'm cool if Snake is the person who is being manipulated, you know?
Sure.
But like, yeah, to offer me the player, like, man, you want a little peep show while you're playing your video game? Like that's really the part that bugs me.
That is kind of the thing that it feels like when you're doing that. Like, you want to do the kind of naughty thing over here?
Yes. Yeah.
We'll give you the option. Maybe there's some information here that you could use, but
yeah.
Maybe something else too.
Yeah, it's very strange.
Yeah.
So that's like the one thing that is still pretty glaring for me.
Yes.
But like everything else has been pretty much a joy.
The joy.
But like, yeah, just very, very interesting playing it now, because I think it is landing, different things are landing well for me, which is fun.
Yeah.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we talk about just kind of the events of the video game? We can walk through them. And I think largely this one will be a little bit easier than 2.
Yeah, it's a little more straightforward, but still gets convoluted. It's straightforward by Metal Gear standards.
Yeah. I still have 3 pages of notes of what happens in the video game, but I think I had like 10 for Metal Gear Solid 2.
2 was wild.
There's definitely parts of this game, Metal Gear Solid 3, where the bullet point is just Snake beats ass, and like that's most of what happens in there.
Beats ass. He does beat ass.
Okay, so why don't we get into it? And for anybody who like wants to go into the game totally blind, this is probably your option, or your jumping off point.
Yeah, this is the time to get off the train, everybody.
Yeah, because we will be going over through the plot and definitely the thematic stuff throughout, but I think a lot of the themes of this game depend on knowing what happens in it, so we can kind of comment on those as they drive by. So yeah, if this is the point where we're jumping off, hey, thanks for listening so far. And once you play it, come back and check this out, because it is a very interesting game to kick around.
Yeah.
All right, why don't we talk about this game?
Let's do it.
All right, so the game starts. You're flying over somewhere in Russia, and a fancy British man is talking to a person named Snake, Jack. Does he call him? I think he calls him Jack in the
I
beginning.
think he does call him Jack. I think everyone in the game calls him Jack, as far as I remember.
He introduces himself to Ocelot as John at some point.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Which throws everyone for a loop. You don't know.
Yes.
Is he telling him the truth?
I have no idea. Yeah.
Or is he just messing with him because he doesn't trust him yet? Who knows? But yeah.
But yeah, so you're on this big plane, and they're talking about doing the first Halo jump. Very iconic scene, I feel like, at this point.
This is a very cool scene.
Yeah.
It's a great way to start a game.
It's like Snake is planning on dropping into Russian territory. It also establishes that this is happening. 1964 is when the first mission happens.
The Virtuous mission?
The Virtuous mission, yeah. There's like two parts of this game, one much shorter than the other, but the first part is this Virtuous mission that Major Zero, the British man, is talking about. And he is essentially given the briefing of like, hey, there's this guy, this scientist named Sokolov who defected to the United States, and he worked on some kind of weapon that the USSR has, and we need you to get him back, essentially. Like, he's deep in enemy territory, and you got to go get him back.
Yeah.
And that's like most of it. That's most of the information that you get. Like, there's some wrinkles here and there, but like that is what is told to you before you jump off this plane to go into Russian territory. It's also, for anybody who's like not horribly familiar with this timeline, 1964, still very much in the Cold War.
Yes.
United States and Russia are like at each other's throats from afar. And so tensions are like incredibly high at this moment.
Yes. What's the year after the Cuban Missile Crisis? 2 years?
Yeah. So Cuban Missile Crisis was in 1962. So it's like very shortly after that. And that's bad moment for the United States and Russian relations.
For the world.
For the world. Yeah, that is true. And so Snake is going in alone. It's just him. And he is supposed to go and get Sokolov. Retrieve him. He jumps. It goes okay. He like misses a little bit, and his pack gets like taken off of him as he's jumping through these trees.
But it gives him the opportunity for a very cool action hero entrance.
It's true. Yeah. He lands like a superhero with like the one foot behind you, kind of beside you, and like a knee down. You get to like pull your head up, and it looks all cool.
And right before a ledge.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Very cool.
It's very cool. Very neat entrance. They also give him the codename Snake at this point.
Naked Snake, technically, I think.
Naked Snake. Yeah, you're right. Which is like, I don't remember if the marketing was so clear about like, this is Big Boss from the other games, but I felt like I knew that going into it when I was playing the game the first time.
I think if it wasn't said explicitly, people who understood the series realized like that with the time frame and everything that, yes, this is Big Boss, his origin story.
Who, like, I guess we haven't mentioned it yet in this episode, but yeah, like Big Boss is the main antagonist of the first Metal Gear games for like the NES, and then a focal point of Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2, like both Snake and Liquid Snake, Solid Snake and Liquid Snake are like clones of the DNA of Big Boss, and so is Solidus Snake from the second one. And so like there's all of these characters are kind of orbiting around this origin point. And so you're seeing him on this first mission that he's going on. He was like a Green Beret prior to this, but he's like working for the CIA now to do this mission specifically.
He's in the big league.
Yeah, he's in the big leagues. So you get there, you go and like find your pack, and the game is like, here's how to sneak. A little tutorial zone introduces you to all your like tools and shit. And like, again, I'm such a sucker for 1 and 2. I love being able to see the vision cones on the map in 1 and 2. And so not having that in this one, I'm like, dude, I have no idea what to do here.
We don't have that technology in Soviet War, Cold War times.
Yes,
that's
which
sci-fi
is
stuff, man.
I want the sci-fi stuff. I want to see their vision cones. But so you get all that. They kind of introduce this. They also, Zero, who is talking to you, he introduces Paramedic, who is a person who is going to help you like along the way through your codec here.
Yeah.
She's like your
support
save point.
crew. He's the support crew, yeah.
You call her to save and get like medical advice and shit like that.
Talk about movies,
yeah, which is like so much fun. I really, really like those conversations that they have with each other.
I like that it's just Hideo just being like, I like this movie and this is why. I'm going to make you listen to me now.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, it's so obvious what's happening there, but I'm also like, I don't know, this rocks. This is cool. You also get introduced to the boss who calls you on your codec. Zero's like, the boss is going to help you. It like really throws Snake for a loop to hear her. And I don't know when exactly they tell you all of this, but the background is that like he used to be trained under her.
They worked together for like 10 years.
Yeah, long time. Like the reason that he is the way that he is largely due to the boss. And then supposedly she kind of just went like radio silent for a couple of years. And he's like, I couldn't get a hold of you at all.
All of a sudden she just comes back up.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so he's like kind of rattled by her appearance and is clearly like very deferential and respectful and like, I need to talk to you. Like, why did you leave? But also like, you're kind of my hero, that kind of shit. So yeah, that you can, call her and talk to her and she'll give you like video game advice and shit like that. But he's very like shaken by this appearance. Anyway, some sneaking happens. You go try and find Sokolov, and you eventually do find this like kind of smaller facility. You can either kill the dudes kind of patrolling it or not. I think that they are USSR soldiers who are patrolling the area.
Yes.
Which makes the fact that there is a different set of soldiers that show up eventually more complicated.
Yeah. Yes.
So yeah, they're USSR soldiers, and yeah, it's a sneaking game. You can go in and stab them or just avoid them at all costs. But you do run into this dude named Sokolov, who is like, you find him like burning schematics for something, and he's like, "Yo, don't kill me! Like, I can't believe you've come to torture me." And Snake's like, "No, I'm here to get you out." And they kind of like talk for a little bit. And Sokolov also mentions that like they have this big fucking tank that I helped develop.
Yeah.
And like, it's not good. It's going to fuck up the whole war. We got to like be careful with this.
A big tank, it's bad. It's a bad tank.
It's a bad tank, which I don't know if he mentions it at this point, but they call it the Shagohod, which is like,
great name.
Very good name. They know how to name big scary robots in this series, man. So yeah, you're eventually like, hey, let's get out of here. We need to like, extract you. And you also encounter Ocelot at this point.
Yes.
Who's like outside, which he's very young in this one.
Yeah. It looks like he's maybe like 20 or something like that.
Yeah, he looks incredibly young compared to like in 2, where he is like a very much an old man by that point.
With a big old stash, yeah.
Yeah, like he's white-haired and balding and stashed, so like he's an older dude. It was like definitely a shock to me the first time I played this. I'm like, dude, this is the guy?
Yeah,
like,
right?
They made him look so green and like overconfident in this game.
I loved the characterization of Ocelot in this game.
Me
it's
too.
So good.
It's really, really fun. Because he is immediately trying to do the same fucking like gun tricks that he was doing in 1 and 2. And like in 1, it's like goofy, but also kind of intimidating because he definitely kicks your ass.
Yeah.
In 1.
Yeah.
And the same thing in 2. He's like a major antagonist. Whereas here, it's like even Snake at this moment is like, who the fuck is this guy?
Yeah.
Like,
Look at this kid twirling his guns around.
Yes, like he's just way too fancy.
He just did like a cute little meow to call all of his crew shoulders for him, his special KGB soldiers to him.
It's amazing. I love that part because like
it's so good.
The whole game teeters on the edge of weird anime shit for a lot of it. And yeah, the like echo reverb that Ocelot does, so good.
He does it multiple times throughout the game too.
Yes,
it's so good.
It's so ridiculous. Again, just like immediately just making the case that like this is a different game than the action games that you're playing at this moment.
Yes.
Nobody has the bravery to make one of their main antagonists this guy. So like all of those soldiers show up, and I think that they're GRU soldiers at this point, like Ocelot and then the GRU soldiers, which is like, I don't know if they explain it at this moment, but it's like part of the military that is like a splinter group at this point.
Yeah,
because they're essentially
within the military.
Yes, yeah, they're trying to make the case that like Khrushchev, the I guess prime minister, I don't remember what the king of Russia was called at the time.
Yeah,
like they're trying to make the case that like Khrushchev shouldn't be in charge of Russia. That like he's too soft. He's not like a good leader, and like we should take over instead. And so that's who Ocelot is working with at this point. You beat up most of his troops, and then also him as well. Again, there's this moment where his gun doesn't go off, like a bullet gets jammed in the chamber, and Snake also like essentially gives him advice of like, you should have done this, that, and the other thing if you really wanted to kill me.
Snake shows that he's a big gun nerd.
Oh my god, he's such a gun nerd in this game.
Throughout the whole game.
The whole game. Anytime he finds a new gun, he's like, oh, fucking sick. This one's cool as hell.
It just goes on and on. I love that. love that bit about this game.
But I also think that like there is definitely an angle of competitiveness between Snake and Ocelot throughout the whole thing for more reasons than one. And I think more reasons than either of them even really know initially.
Sure.
But I think that there's definitely like most of these games, there's a weird sort of like eroticism between these guys too.
I thought you were going to say mutual respect, but I see eroticism as well.
That too, eventually, but also the weird eroticism of just like, are they going to kiss soon? Like it constantly feels like we're just one twirl away from kissing. Yes, yeah, all the weird hand motions and shit. And like there's just no way around it, but like the metaphor of a gun being a dick too, and like not being able to go off in the moment that he needs to. Like there's a lot of kind of like emasculating energy going towards Ocelot in this.
Yeah.
And like, some of it might not land or, go over somebody's head, but I think it's all there. And it sort of builds this case that like, this guy ain't it. Like he is not the soldier he thinks he is.
He's young.
He's young and he's inexperienced, despite the fact that he is the kid of someone incredibly important in this game. So like that will come up eventually again. But yeah, you kick his ass and then you're like, all right, let's get the fuck out of here. You then go and cross this or attempt to cross this bridge back to your extraction point. And Sokolov points out like, hey, the Shagohod's over there. It's just like on a ridge somewhere. It's unclear if it's been like stolen at this point, but it's present. And he's like, look at that shit. Like it can launch a nuke from wherever.
He's like, look at that shit.
Look at how fucking cool it looks.
It is just looking pretty cool on a
cool
ridge of a mountain.
It's this weird combination of being like definitely the 1960s, but also weirdly futuristic shit, like a gigantic tank being there.
Yeah.
Which is very fun. Very cool.
Big megalophobia vibe.
Yes. Yeah. It's way too big. So he points it out. And then you also, on this bridge, you encounter two people. One, the boss, your kind of previous hero. She shows up carrying these like two boxes, which at some point they reveal are these Davy Crockett mobile nuclear warheads.
Yes.
And
rocket launcher warhead, nuke essentially.
Yes. She shows up and she like looks at Snake and she's like, I'm defecting to the GRU. It's over for you, essentially.
Yeah.
I think she gives him the option of like, you can run if you want to. But Snake is like, dude, what the fuck? Like, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
And then like tries to beat her up and she just kicks his whole ass.
It's not even a contest. Like pretty much how Snake looked in comparison to Ocelot is the same between the boss and Snake at this point. Snake looks like a child compared to her.
Yeah. She disassembles his gun when she's fighting him.
Such a powerful move. My God.
Yeah. And again, if we're kind of going with the emasculation metaphor, like again, just totally deconstructing this guy. Like he is nothing to who she is, And so, yeah, she does that, breaks his arm and throws him over the edge of this bridge.
Yep.
And he's like out, right? Just totally got his ass kicked. All the while there was this other dude behind her who is this character named Volgan.
Colonel Volgan. Yes.
Colonel Volgan, who is like immediately so anime. He's got like lightning fucking scars down his face and shit, like just way over the top.
He's big, very huge, big, bald.
And it's revealed that like he is the leader of this splinter group, the GRU. And he's the one in charge. And she's essentially like now working for him is the reveal here. Anyway, so Snake gets his ass kicked and they're like, all right, Sokolov, you're back with us. Sorry, bro. And then they make their escape. So Volgan, Ocelot, the boss, and Ava, or not Ava, it is a different character that you're not really sure who it is yet. I think Tatiana is her name.
Yeah.
She's posing as like Sokolov's like maybe assistant, maybe mistress kind of deal. And she is also in this helicopter.
Yeah. She's a supposed defector from the NSA.
Yes.
Codebreaker
Exactly.
as well.
Yes. So they're all in a helicopter and Sokolov's like, dude, this fucking rocked. We got everything we needed to. And he's also like, I got to try one of these nukes out.
Yeah.
And so
he doesn't just say it like that. He like opens them up and starts hissing like a fucking snake.
Yes.
When he sees them.
He's like, I am so stoked for this nuke right now. So of course launches one. Ocelot himself seems a little bit weird about this. He's like, I mean, like obviously that's weird, but I think Ocelot's like, that's crazy. You shouldn't do that.
Yeah. He's very much about like, how can you do this to your fellow countrymen? I know that we're betraying them, but like, you're just going to nuke your fellow countrymen. He's aghast. Yeah.
Cause he's launching this nuke, I think at one of the facilities that Sokolov used to work at to kind of like destroy his research.
Yeah. It was the one that they made the Shagohod this version of it in.
Yes, yeah. And so it's like kind of protecting both his knowledge of the Shagohod, because I think it's also revealed that like they have stolen the Shagohod at this point. Like it's under their control.
Yeah. And they fly out of there on like 4 transport helicopters and it looks real cool.
It looks cool as hell, yeah. And so he fires this thing off. Ocelot's bummed out because I think Colonel Volgan sees the USSR people as like traitors almost, of like, you know, you're following someone who's like not a strong enough leader, so like fuck these guys. And yeah, Ocelot seems a little bit more tied to like, we're doing this for the good of the country, kind of. Yeah. And like, you know, people shouldn't necessarily get caught in between that. Or at least that's how he acts.
Ocelot's still doing it for Russia.
Yes, yeah. There's also some weird groping in this scene too.
Yeah.
Where Volgan gropes Tatiana, which is very bizarre. And like, I think it is intended to show how bad of a dude he is, of just like, he has no boundaries with this shit. But like, I think the nuke did that fine.
Yeah, we didn't need the rest of this.
I don't need the rest of that. Like, I just, if he nuked people, that's okay. I get it. I understand. So
Nuking
again,
is
just
enough
like,
characterization.
I get it. Yeah. So that part of it's just always a little bit like, geez. Anyway, so Snake is shown having like not died. He like fell into the water and like wound up downriver, but he is definitely like in the radiation zone of this nuke that goes off. So like, he's not in great shape at this moment. I think you also have to like, this is where you learn how to heal Snake, of like, hey, your bone's broken. You got to go into the menu and like
it up.
Fix it, which is like pretty neat. I like that. But you do all that. And then it's like, all right, we got to get you the fuck out of there. Cause like this mission is like not going great. So yeah, that is the beginning of this game. And you do eventually get out of there. It cuts to a different cutscene and Major Zero, again, British man, talking is like, all right, so here's the fallout of what happened from that. The Khrushchev and like the CIA and President Johnson have like talked, and Khrushchev seems to know that like it was not the CIA that did this, that launched the nuke, because he's aware of like Volgan and the kind of like coup d'etat that he's trying to perform here. But he's in a pinch point because the plane that was flying Snake into Russia was spotted. Like, people are aware of it. And that happened just before the blast. And so it's like, well, like, what do you expect me to do here? And he's like, all right, let's do this. And it's sort of like self-serving, kind of not, but he's like, to prove your innocence, you need to do a couple things for me. What you have is a week, and I need you to go in, infiltrate Volgan's bases, kill all the Cobras and the boss, and destroy the Shagohod, and like, then we're square, and I won't point my nukes at the West, essentially. Yeah. Because until then, like, it just kind of looks like you guys are being shitty to us, and like, I need something tangible to prove that it wasn't you.
I'm gonna be real, man. It looks like you're being pretty shitty to us.
The US looks pretty bad. Looks pretty bad right now. And so Major Zero is like, we have to do this right this time.
Yeah, this is our last chance. This is Fox's last chance.
Yes, yeah. Fox being the unit that they're currently in. So that's most of it. And he's like, you have a week, get it done. Let's do this. So Snake goes in again in a much like higher tech approach this time. He's in like what looks like a fucking rocket ship or something. And he shows up, it like crash lands, and he's like, all right, let's do this. He's approaching from Alaska this time, so the Arctic Circle. A
very cool scene where he outruns a couple MiGs in this drone jet that he has. Once cool again, very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, like they just know how to make shit look cool, despite the fact they're talking about like nuclear destruction and like real world shit. It's like, also, that's a cool scene you guys did.
I just love those 2 entry scenes into Russia, because I feel like they set the stage so well for being behind enemy lines, and just like how big of an issue it is to be spotted and to be known to be here. I think they're just masterfully done that way. It's so good.
Totally. They had said too, or in the development process of this, that Hideo Kojima had mentioned, like, in 1 and 2, you're already in the base that you need to be in. And they're like, we really wanted you to feel like you have landed far away, and you have to kind of like go through the outskirts of this base to get there. And especially in this series, because like, you definitely land in the jungle. You know, we haven't talked about it so much yet, but like, you are deep in the jungle here. There's fucking crocodiles and shit.
Yeah.
Which I also learned, I didn't know this, but they had said that like a lot of those animals were flown into this area in the game, not in the real life, but like that they were brought in essentially. And I can't remember exactly the reasoning behind that.
I was about to say, I never remembered there being any crocodiles in Russia.
Yeah, I don't know if there are. It's a big country, so maybe. But
Volga just thought it was cool.
Yeah, I mean, like that may have been the actual reason too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so like you are really having to like sneak around areas that are not present in 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
It's also worth mentioning the mechanics around like eating animals in this.
Yeah.
Of like every now and then you'll encounter some kind of animal, whether it be like a rat or a bird or a snake or a crocodile. If you kill it, then sometimes like essentially a little ration will pop out of them that you have to then eat to stave or to it's like to increase your like stamina meter, essentially.
It's your stamina meter, yeah.
Which again, a mechanic that was not present in 1 and 2, but really reinforces that idea of like, I have to be able to survive out here because this is a long mission and one where I need to eat creatures to survive.
Yes.
Again, I think, this is also, it's the title of the video game is Snake Eater. So
gotta eat the snakes.
Gotta eat the snakes. Okay. So, Snake goes back to essentially the same place he was before, the same little area that he met up with, Sokolov in. And, he meets up with Ava, is the code name of this person.
Wait, you missed the part where the boss kicks his whole ass again?
Does she kick his ass again?
Because he lands there.
Yes.
And he goes back to his drone, and then she blows it up.
Oh my God. Yeah, I totally forgot about that.
And once again, kicks his whole ass while she rides in on a white horse, which was fucking
horse
cool.
Is so nuts. Yeah.
It was so good. Sorry,
I totally
that part
forgot about
also
that.
I think is important to my soul.
Yeah, no, anytime Snake gets owned by the boss, I'm like, this is cool as hell.
Because she has very much this vibe of, I thought I taught you this lesson, old man.
Yes, yeah, like, why are you here?
Once again, dismantles his gun. Once again, just treats him like a child. Why are you here? It's a week later. I thought you would like get the message to just leave. And he's like, nah, I'm back, baby.
Yeah, no, I totally forgot about that. Thank you. Because yeah, it's just another instance of him kind of getting his shit rocked by her. It's also, we haven't talked about this yet, but the woman who voices the boss is Lori Allen, who I simply can't hear her voice without hearing Pearl from SpongeBob.
She's Pearl?
She's Pearl.
She is both Pearl and the boss?
And the boss.
That is some range, dude.
It's all I can hear when I'm hearing her is Pearl.
That is one of the weirdest voice acting resumes I've heard.
Yeah, it's very strange.
Wow.
She's been in a ton of cartoons, so like she's definitely well versed in this shit. But yeah, so and she's doing like a really good job here in this game. I think she like totally matches the moment, being like kind of above it. And somebody who's like, yeah, just totally kicking Snake's ass in more ways than one, right? Like even Vulcan doesn't really seem to fuck with her that much because he's like, she could probably take me.
Yeah,
if she wanted to. She's like this legendary soldier at this point, right? Like she was in World War II and like formed the Cobras around that time.
To help end the war. They're like known war heroes from that time.
Yes. Yeah. Who like I don't know if they had explained exactly who it is yet, but the Cobras are just like another group of soldiers that work for her. All weirdos. Not one of them a normal person of the bunch. It's all weirdies. But they all rock. They're very cool. So yeah, you end up meeting with Ava. Supposedly you were supposed to meet up with two people, Ava and Adam. But she's like, Adam didn't show. I don't know where he is. It's just me now. And Snake's like, all right, I guess that's fine. She, I think Ocelot also shows up here again. And
yes,
she motorcycle roundhouse kicks him essentially.
That was so good.
It's so incredible.
That spot is so, all the stuff with Ava and her motorcycle is so good. Like when she jumps through waterfalls and there's like a screeching like bird in the background. So good.
Yeah, it's amazing. Essentially, she like they're trying to get away from Ocelot or just like make him go away because he shows back up here, and she like rides up him. Essentially, she does like a wheelie and then like rides up his body and kicks his head with her back wheel.
Doesn't kill him somehow in this moment. Yes. This is a big old bike that she is riding. Yeah,
it's like a 2-seater with like a passenger car on the side.
Yeah.
Which is just amazing. I couldn't believe that scene. It's still happening.
Yeah. Also, Snake believes that Ava is who she says she is, even though she doesn't say the password.
Yes. Yeah, that is true.
Because the question is, who are the Patriots? and she's supposed to say la li lu lay lo, but instead she just murders a bunch of people, and he just takes that as confirmation.
Yes. Again, kind of like speaking to his inexperience here.
Yeah. Or the fact
Because,
that she
like-
can just kind of, she knows how to manipulate him.
Exactly. Yes. Like she knows where to push his buttons, because they end up talking a little bit after this, like meeting up at this like safe house, another place where just Snake is so horny for guns at this section where he's like, oh, it's a fucking sweet gun, and like takes it apart and like refers to a bunch of stats about guns. I'm like, my brother, I think I know what's going on in that brain.
Yeah. And starts like modifying it a little bit himself too.
Yes.
Makes it easier for CQC.
Jesus, dude. We haven't even talked about CQC. We got to talk about CQC. Close quarters combat.
Yeah.
It is, I think, a real thing, but also a mechanic that they've added to this game where like you can kind of like fight people in different ways when you get up next to them than you could in the other ones. It was largely just punch 3 times in the other games, or, you know, put them in a chokehold when you run up behind them. But you can do a lot of that in this game of like run up to somebody, put them in a chokehold while you're in front of them, or stab them, or throw them to the ground and maybe knock them out and shit like that.
Interrogate them.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Interrogation, a mechanic that I simply refused to understand the first time I played it until the very last part of the game when I was like, how do I beat this boss?
You got it. You got to do some CQC.
Gonna use CQC. It's essentially Snake just holds his gun with a knife at the bottom of it and like can fight when he's close up.
Yeah. He brought both a gun and a knife to a gun and a knife fight.
Yeah, no, he's got both. It's cool as hell. Okay, so I think like Ava here gives Snake information about where he needs to go next. And I think it's to go meet up with this dude named Granin, the like scientist.
Does she say specifically to find Granin?
I don't know if she does.
I don't think she does. I think she says they moved Sokolov to a different location.
Yes.
You got to go find him.
Because he was looking for her.
He's in like the mountains or something like that.
Yeah, I think you're right there.
Yeah.
And she takes off and is like, sorry, goodbye. Again, like, I don't know if it was meant to be a secret, but like you see her and then see Tatiana showing up and like hanging out with Volgan and Sokolov more. And like, you can tell that they look pretty similar. So I don't know if it's meant to be a reveal at some point, but like it's the same person, right? Like Ava is Tatiana.
Yeah. I personally did not think it was revealed, but who knows?
Yeah, who knows? So, you also fight a couple bosses here. I forget, is the pain before or after you fight Ocelot?
After.
Okay,
it's
sure.
Ocelot
So there's
first. Yeah,
there's a boss battle with Ocelot where you're like, he's doing his fucking cool tricks across like a little gap.
There's like there's a chasm between the two of you.
It's pretty fun. You like shoot him. It's fine.
He does another little cute little meow.
Oh God, it's so good every time. I think he tells people like, don't shoot Snake too. Like you can't fight him. It's just me and him right now. And that's something that is carried through like the rest of the series is that like Ocelot oftentimes like puts like a weird emphasis on not just winning, but also winning right.
Yeah.
You know, like I want to beat someone one-on-one, you know?
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
I was going to say that this Ocelot now has his final set of guns. Because when you first meet him, but when you first find Sokolov, he's carrying like an automatic, and Snake makes a remark like, you're using more of a revolver style. And the next time you see him, which is like right before this spot when you and Ava get ambushed by him, he's using like this really ornate engraved revolver, and Snake once again is just like, I don't really see what the engraving does, but whatever. It's like kind of just like gives him shit for having a pretty looking gun. Just like, that's dumb, dude. Why do you have that? This is war.
Yeah.
And now he has like some serious ass revolvers.
And he's still doing tricks. Still throwing his guns around and shit. But like, you know, he's more of a fight for you at this point, especially because like, you know, it puts you in the driver's seat. You do have to beat him in a fight. Yeah. But I think at some point he's like, all right, you beat me. Bye. Like I'm leaving now.
Yeah. So you beat him, and then there's all of a sudden a bunch of bees. Hornets just descend upon everybody, and because you're surrounded by a bunch of the GRU soldiers, and they all get killed by I'm assuming they're murder hornets. Yeah. Like at least that's what Western media calls them when they moved in here into Washington State. And so I really loved the way that Ocelot dealt with them, which is just twirl his guns really fast, and there's just a bunch of dead hornets around him because he's just twirling his guns all around his body.
Oh my God.
And then Snake, to get away from them, jumps down the chasm that was in between them into a cave. And you walk around a dark cave for a bit.
Yeah, you do. It's like kind of confusing, and it took me a while to figure out where to go.
Man, it was so difficult playing it on the PS3 because man, was that dark. I could not see a damn thing.
And I like wonder if there's a way that I could have like made it easier for myself, like use some kind of item that would have made it more illuminated.
You can find a torch in there.
I didn't.
Yeah, neither did I. I just had to go.
Yeah, just kind of like tried to find my way.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually you do find your way out of there, and you encounter one of the Cobras called the Pain, who is just doing anime poses. He's doing JoJo poses while he's fighting you.
He sure is.
He's like the 6th member of the Ginyu Force or whatever, like just doing all sorts of wild shit.
Yeah.
But he controls the bees.
He sure does.
Again, if you weren't on board with the sort of magical realism shit that's happening here already, like here it is. Here's the guys whose weapon is bees.
Yes. Here's the guy whose weapon is bees. Volgan has electricity just like coursing throughout his body
Constantly,
at all times.
yeah.
Never explained.
Never explained, but I love whenever they like put bullets in between his hands and he can shoot them because he has enough electricity out of them.
Pretty cool.
That's pretty sick.
It's
that's
pretty cool.
good.
Just like blast a hole in a wall when he punches it.
Yes, like that's very good.
Sweet.
That works for me.
Yeah.
But so the Pain is here. He's B-Man, and I feel like he was introduced and just promptly killed.
Yes.
Like he was there for 1 minute doing his poses, and then he like explodes when you beat him, I think.
They all explode when you beat them, which
That
is
is true.
great.
Yeah, you're right.
He is full of bees, apparently, because when he explodes, it's all bees.
It is all bees. Who like leave, right? They don't like attack you or anything.
I think they just die.
Oh my God.
Because I forget where I read it, but it's like canonically he harvests or like grows the bees inside of him and like nurtures them, which is why they listen to him and like why he can shoot them out of his mouth at high speeds.
Jesus, dude.
So when he dies, they explode out of him and then they all like die afterward.
The Pain was born sometime during the mid 1900s to early 1910s. At an unknown point in time, he was infected with parasites that gave him the ability to secrete pheromones to give him control over insects and receive large amounts of adrenaline in response to pain. Damn.
Because a parasite?
He got a parasite. Gives him the stinky stuff that insects crave.
Wow.
Anyway, so you beat him, he explodes, and they all do, like, they say their name when they explode, which is just very fun.
Pain, and there's reverb.
Like echoes. Yeah. Totally ridiculous. Just like the most video game shit of all time. Like I feel like Hideo does this in a couple of the video games, specifically here and then like kind of at the end of Death Stranding as well. It's just so video gamey that it's kind of fun. Like it clearly knows that like exploding characters is a thing that happens sometimes at the end of levels. And like, that's fine. That's ridiculous. And the game, like Snake makes no remark about it. He's just like, okay, I beat him.
Yeah. Or I mean, like the first time you're introduced to the Cobras on the bridge when they abduct Sokolov, and it's the Pain and the Fear are in the helicopter, and to get Sokolov, the Pain puts the Fear in his bees and goes down. The Fear grabs Sokolov upside down with like his weird tongue hanging out and takes them back up. So it's just a weird game.
It's a very weird game. The Cobras all feel like a Mega Man boss battle.
Ooh, yeah.
Like they're all just such weird fucking dudes that have such a specific ability.
Yeah.
And this one is B-Man. This is a bee guy.
He's bees.
So you leave this cave and there's like some sneaking that happens in between this point. But the next like major beat is that you encounter this Soviet scientist named Granin, who like doesn't seem super mad that Snake is there and kind of like starts talking to him a lot and spilling like a lot of secrets. Yeah. Cause like he's USSR. So like he's kind of being held at this point as a prisoner. And he's like, yeah, dude, me and Sokolov, we were working on the fucking Shagohod. I had this real banger of an idea for a big bipedal tank, but they didn't want that shit.
God, Volgan,
I love that.
Dummy.
It's very fun. They make kind of like passing, not remarks, but like the camera pans over to a couple of like drawings that he has that it's clearly Metal Gear, like from what you will see in the other games.
There's like a figure of Metal Gear Ray behind him.
Yes, which is very bizarre. Like that's not a design that even exists, I think at this point. But yeah, he's like clearly kind of poking at that direction that the series will go. And I think that like, you don't get outright confirmation, but he talks about like, I sent some of these designs to like one of my friends or something like that.
My colleague in the United States. And then there's like a picture of him and it looks a lot like Hal Emmerich.
Yeah, it's definitely like Hal's dad. Because in Metal Gear Solid 1, Hal talks about like, oh, my dad helped build like, you know, bombs and shit like that. Like he was involved in arms building and now here I am building, you know, another one. Yep. And so like, I don't think it's outright, but it is kind of fun that they've made that connection in this game without being so overly fan servicey of like, isn't it cool that you know this? other than the Metal Gear Ray statue being in the background.
Right.
But anyway, he kind of spills the beans to Snake that there is this facility called Doogragdaba that Sokolov is in. It's where Volgan is kind of stationed, and they also have the Shagohod, the big ass tank there.
Yeah.
And so he's like, you need to go there. And like, there's kind of like a weird camaraderie here where Snake is like, this guy's all right for the most part. But I think it's just like Granon's positioned as someone who is like disillusioned with the whole thing and is kind of like, fuck it, man, I'll tell you whatever you need to know. So yeah.
He's all drunk and it's just like, fuck Sokolov. Here's all the info.
Yeah. Yes. So like this part of the game from here until Doogragdaba is like fairly blurry for me. Like I know what happens, but it's like, I feel like this is kind of the main chunk of the game where you're doing the most like sneaking and stealthy shit. Cause you fight like 3 of the Cobras, like kind of back to back of the Fear, the End, and the Fury, all kind of at the same, not the same time, but like, pretty close to one another. The Fear, who is like Lizard Man.
Yeah. He can turn invisible and shoots you with poison arrows.
Yeah. Who's just like so bizarre. I think he's one of the weirder ones of the bunch.
He is. He's the one that feels kind of the least human.
Yeah. Yes.
He has a very long tongue, also never explained.
Yeah, no, not at all. And like this boss fight for whatever reason kind of kicked my ass. I had a hard time with the Fear this time around.
It was hard to see because you needed like the thermal goggles or something like that to be able to see him.
Yeah, you can see him.
I did not have them, so I was just kind of like,
oh no,
I was just had to peer very closely to the screen to see the slight distortion of his camouflage.
Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of a tough fight, but yeah, I think I ended up doing the same thing. I think I had the goggles, but I was like, this is too much. I'm just going to look for the rustling in the leaves and see if I can't shoot him.
Yeah, because he goes up in the trees and like shoots the arrows at you, and you have to remove the arrows, otherwise they knock you out or poison you.
Yes. Yeah. Which is like challenging. The poison really sucks. That was like hard to deal with. Because you have to like, I think it like doesn't tell you that you're poisoned. It's just like you look up and your health is much lower than it was.
Oh God.
And so you have to go into the menu to like, the menu that usually fixes your bones and then also treat your poison or whatever, which is kind of cool. I think a recurring thing in Metal Gear is sometimes it just doesn't tell you something that's happening and you have to notice yourself.
Yeah.
Which is really fun. I think that's really good. And the poison here is kind of an example of that.
Agreed.
You also fight the End, which like...
Oh wait, hold on real quick. When you kill the Fear, he's full of arrows.
Yes. Yeah. He explodes into these little like bolts that he's been throwing at you.
I just wanted to be clear about that. Okay, continue to the end.
Sure. Just to make sure we know what everyone's full of.
Yes.
Okay, so more sneaking happens, and you also encounter the End, who is regarded as the father of modern sniping.
It's great moniker.
So ridiculous. But he's like this 100-year-old man who, like, they say he, like, stays in position for weeks or whatever to get the right shot on his target. And he's also like talking as if like, I am going to die soon.
Yeah.
I think he's also been being pushed around in like a wheelchair up to this point too.
Yes. Yeah. I think when the boss talks about him, she's like, he's pretty much dead unless he's like in battle. Like he's conserving his energy at all times.
It's again, anime as hell. But I think tied for best boss in this game is the End.
This one is so good. This one is so good.
Essentially, the way that this works is that you enter into this like arena and it is totally quiet and you have to just have this like sniper fight with the End because you also at this point have a sniper rifle, and it's just incredible. It is so good because he is not easy to find.
No.
And you are like out there and oftentimes you have no clue where this dude is. And so it's this very tense situation where you're like, God, I hope he doesn't see me right now while I'm like looking around to see if I can't find him.
All you're looking for is like a little bit of a glimmer from his
like his scope.
From his scope, yeah.
And there's like a lot of ways to beat him too. The one that I end up using more often than not is like trying to sneak up on him essentially, of like knowing where he might be and then getting close enough to the point where like he doesn't see me getting up on him.
Yeah.
There's like 3 areas in this part of the game that you kind of go between of like, he'll retreat to another area that's like a loading screen away and set up camp somewhere else to try and get you.
Yeah. I really like that the boss battle takes place over 3 separate like loading areas, like small area arenas. That's pretty unique.
It's unlike really any other fight in the series.
Mm-hmm.
It's like so unique and so cool. And like, I think Hideo Kojima, like at some point had said like, I wanted this fight to be harder. Like I wanted it to take literal days
Mm-hmm. Oh
to
my
beat
God.
him, which is just so ridiculous. But even still, I think like this is, it's just so much fun. And all the while, like the game is still going on, right? Like you can find animals and like eat while you're fighting him and call people on your codec to be like, what the fuck do I do?
Mm-hmm.
It's just all really good and really works. Again, adds to this feeling that you're like hunting each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's also the very fun Easter egg that like, if you just wait a week or set your console ahead a week, he just dies of old age.
Yep. Yeah.
Amazing,
So good.
incredible. Like that's so good. Not something I've ever tried, but just like, I love knowing that that is a possibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you just go and find him and he's just dead.
Oh yeah. Really, really good. Do you know what he explodes into? I don't remember.
I think he might just explode, but I'm looking at
Just
a video
normal
right
explosions.
now. He might
His
just
little
explode.
bird doesn't die, right?
No, his dentures pop out and then he
Yes,
just explodes. I think he just explodes.
Yeah.
And oh no, there's leaves.
Ah, sure. So like his ghillie suit or whatever.
Yeah, it looks like his explosion is leaves. At least it's meant to look like leaves.
Yeah.
So there you
It's
go.
very cool.
Everyone's got to explode into something.
But yeah, again, like mirroring a couple of the different fights in the series up to this point, like Sniper Wolf in the first one. I forget, was there an actual sniper battle in 2? I don't remember.
I don't think so.
You fought with snipers a couple times, but I don't remember if there was an actual one-on-one fight.
I don't think there was.
Yeah, not really. Not like straight up.
No.
So yeah, very, very good boss. Like I said, I think this one's tied for my favorite in the game. This and then the very last boss.
Yeah.
Very last boss.
This game, the boss battles in this game, I think all are very good.
Yeah.
In one way or another.
Yes, I totally agree that they're all like very tied to the characters that almost feel like a monster of the week kind of deal of like, look at this ridiculous weirdo that you have to fight now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is really, really cool. And again, it mirrors the first one. Like I feel like 2 wasn't as focused on the bosses, despite the fact they were there, right? Like fighting Vamp and Fortune and shit like that in the other ones, and Olga. Like they were present, but I feel like 1 and 3 are like bookmarked by bosses, and all of them kind of play a big part in the game. So it definitely, I feel like 1 and 3 have a lot in common.
Yeah.
And this is just another thing.
Yeah, like you said, they seem more thematically in tune with the game. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Let's see what happens. You also fight the Fury at some point here.
Yeah.
Who is like...
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah, please.
In between the end and the Fury.
Oh, man.
You got to mention it.
Yes.
The ladder.
The ladder.
You got to mention the ladder.
Absolutely iconic scene.
Yeah.
You like... I think it's after the fight with the end, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it's right after the gateway opens up and the ladder's right at the end of the hallway there.
Yeah. You find a ladder and you start climbing and it just goes on and on and on and on. And eventually you just like get to hear the like main title track from MGS3.
Yeah, which is an absolute banger of a song.
It's really good. Yeah. I like the first time I played it, I was not anti, but I was like, this is weird. It feels kind of out of place, but I think in hindsight, it's definitely doing the like James Bond kind of song.
Oh yeah.
And especially in this moment, I think it really works here.
But you're so supreme. I give my life, not for honor, but for you. In my time, there'll be no one else. Crime, it's the way I fly to you. I'm still in a dream, snake eater.
Of like feeling like you're just like way deep into this mission, and it's kind of reminding you of like what is happening here, what the like not the stakes, but you know, just the fact that you are on this really troubling challenge that you're in.
Do you think that the ladder would have felt as good after any other boss besides the end?
I think you could have put it at the literal end of the game.
Sure.
After you fight that boss, and I think it would have hit very hard But I think the end is good because it's like this moment where the pace is broken up so dramatically.
Yeah.
Of like in every other fight, it is frenetic and intense and you're just shooting like crazy and trying not to get hit by bees or knives or whatever.
Yeah.
But the end, like, kind of combo breaks all that and is like, you're going to sit here and look down your sniper rifle for 5 minutes to try and find a guy.
Yeah. And it's so silent. And then when you're doing
Very
the
quiet.
ladder, it's just the sound of your feet on the ladder and then the music, or not even the music,
Yes.
just the singing.
Yeah, it's like an a cappella version of the song. It's really great. And like, it's become such a thing, you know, like people know. If you have played this game or have heard about this game, you know this scene.
There are achievements in games that if you go up a long ladder, it says Snake
Yes,
Eater, achievement unlocked, stuff like that.
I mean, like, it's amazing. It encapsulates, I think it's a perfect representation of what makes these games cool, you know, of like, why isn't this a cutscene? Why am I climbing the ladder? And why is there a ladder this big? Like, it is unruly.
3
how large
minutes.
this thing
3 minutes going up a ladder.
Yes.
Can you imagine how tired you would be 3 minutes going straight up a ladder?
It's crazy. And so like that is there. And also I'm feeling it, you know, 2 minutes into this song, I'm like, yeah, dude, like this is very good.
It's just a very interesting part of the game to just let you think about what's been going on and to reiterate, hey, you're eating those snake, you're killing the cobras. Here we go.
Yes, yeah, exactly. You have eaten 3 snakes already. It's very interesting. And like, I feel like you see this stuff even in Death Stranding, right? Where like early on in the game where it's like you're just walking back to town or whatever. And there's a couple of needle drops that they do in those games that feel very similar of like mechanically, this is not that challenging of a moment. And I think maybe a less confident game would put that song over a cutscene, like relinquish control a little bit and be like, you just need to watch this right now. But I think putting you in the driver's seat and forcing you, like, you're going to have to press up this whole time if you want this to work.
Yeah.
It forces you to engage with it a little bit more of just like, I'm not doing anything else. Like, I might as well just sit here and listen to the lyrics of this song and think about it and feel and all that sort of stuff. So like, I don't know. It's really wonderful. And I think like it's kind of a meme and sort of a legendary moment for a reason, you know? And I'm also very excited to see people who have maybe never played this game or played this moment play it in the remake. Cause I think it would be bananas if they took that out. I think it would be absolutely bananas.
People would riot. I would riot.
I think they
You
probably
can't
would.
take the ladder out.
There are many important parts of this game that I think you probably could remove, but that is like maybe near the top.
How to
of the stuff that
alienate
you
a whole
cannot.
fan base in one easy move.
Yeah, can you imagine if they just like said like you just have to press up once and he'll keep climbing or whatever?
No, I need to earn that song.
I think you got to earn it. Yeah.
Earn that.
Oh man. Yeah, it's really good. I think like just on a baseline, the a cappella version of that song is very pretty and really like good. And it starts so softly too.
Yeah, you're like, did I just hear what I thought I heard?
Yes.
You're like, is that
I
happening?
I thought maybe like, is that a character that is singing that? Maybe like they intended Ava to be somebody who sings that, and I'll run into her here in a second. But like by the time you're in the like chorus and shit, you're like, no, this is just a needle drop. This is just a full ass song in here. And something that like I think games have a kind of a weird relationship with a lot of the time. Like music is oftentimes used as almost like another element in the background rather than something that is like working directly in tandem with what is going on.
Yeah.
Or it's just like orchestral, like kind of mood music, right? Like something to get you feeling what you need to feel in that moment.
Yeah.
But I think this and Death Stranding like work really well with like actual licensed music to kind of say something different. God, it's really effective.
Love it.
Anyway, the Fury.
The Fury. Yeah.
You show up in his domain under here, essentially after the ladder, right? It's directly after that.
It's pretty soon after that. There's like one little sneaky area you go through and then you're pretty much there.
Yeah. So you like fight this dude who he was like, I think a retired cosmonaut, like he used to be an astronaut at some point. And like, I found his character really interesting because he kind of had the opposite experience that you hear people who have been to space have had.
Yeah.
Where like people talk about going to space and they're like, they see the Earth and they're like, all of our conflicts feel so small and insignificant. And like, I we should be able to solve this.
Yeah.
Everything feels so ridiculous in comparison. Whereas he came back and was like, shit fucking sucks and I need to burn it down.
So mad. He had a vision of burning the whole world, I think. Or like the world in flames. Like, geez, man.
Which is wild and like very cool for a boss.
Mm-hmm.
He's also like in his astronaut uniform while you're fighting him. He has like a jetpack on, essentially.
Yeah, he's got the CCP cosmonaut uniform going. Yeah, with the jetpack.
Yes.
The jetpack's pretty cool. It like shoots out jet fuel and then ignites it and then he goes up into the air.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely bananas. This one also kicked my ass. I had a hard time with
This one was hard too.
Around.
Yeah.
Because you're like running between these like columns to try and hit him. And if he sees you, it's like kind of tough to get out of the way of his flamethrower.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, his flamethrower is strong and he gets around
pretty strong.
fast.
Yeah. Of course, eventually you do beat him and he like flies up into the ceiling essentially and explodes. And if I remember correctly, there's like noises of like comms communications to like from like ground zero,
space
essentially.
communications
Or ground control rather. I heard I had read that Hideo wanted to put ground control to Major Tom in here.
Oh, really?
Not in this specific spot, but in the game towards the end. Because I think like, you know, there's just this theme of space in this one very frequently, which would be very fun thematically, I feel like. But I think they couldn't get the rights to that.
In the beginning, Major Zero says to call him Major Tom for the Virtuous mission. So I guess he got it a little bit.
Very fun. All right, let's see. What else?
Oh, he explodes into not one, but two flaming skulls.
Yes. Yeah. So wild.
Very cool.
So ridiculous.
Very cool.
Very cool. Anyway, so once you finish that boss fight, you are at Groznygrad. And essentially the next, like, I don't know, hour or two at this point is you trying to like infiltrate this base and get to Sokolov, I think. Like that's still kind of your mission here.
Yes.
There's a number of ways you do that. It's like you know, dress up and you like steal different card keys and shit.
You have to dress up as Raiden.
Yeah, it's so weird. You put on a mask, it looks so much like Raiden.
And you've had this mask since the beginning of the game?
Something like that. Yeah.
Well, it just calls it mask when you look into your face, like face paints, and it's just a mask of Raiden. You're just like, okay, this is a funny like gag. Thanks, Hideo. And then near the end of the game, it becomes super important to have this because otherwise your costume would not work.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. It's so bizarre. I think you have to like steal somebody's outfit too.
Yeah. There's a guy, Major Rykov, Raidonovich Rykov or something like that.
Yeah, something like
and
that.
you have to, steal his outfit. He looks exactly like Raiden from the second game.
Yes.
Put him in a closet and put on the mask, and because you need Colonel class clearance to get to the area where Sokolov is.
Which you do end up getting.
Yes.
I find this part of the game very fun. I feel like this is kind of the most dense stealth stuff that you get.
Yes, the part of the game that is most like number 2. Chase is like, this is my jam.
You're in a facility and you're having to disguise yourself and sneak around and do cool shit. Like that is the part that I like. Yeah. Shocker.
You mean the part that's cool, David? Yeah.
The good part.
The good part. It is a good part of the game. I enjoy it too.
It is a good part of the game. Yeah. Okay. So you do end up going through a lot of this area and managing to get to Sokolov, but Volgan shows up and he's like, hey, you're not who you say you are.
Yeah. And grabs you by your ball.
Sure does. Again, kind of
weird.
I think reference to 2, but what a weird one to make.
Yeah.
That like, that's the way to identify someone. Again, I'm of two minds with this shit of like, that's just like kind of a brutal thing to show on screen.
Yeah.
Without really mentioning it beforehand. But also I think just like the sexual angst in a lot of these games, like it makes sense that something that weird would be in there.
Yeah.
That like none of these people are comfortable in their own body or something like that. And so like this kind of shit happens, but still it feels weird. It's not great.
Yeah.
But anyway, that you get found out there. I think it's also revealed prior to this that Volgan has killed Granin.
Yeah. When you first get to Groznygrad, Volgan is like beating up an oil barrel with Granin in it.
Yes. Yeah. Which I only mentioned because at this point he also kills Sokolov as well.
Yeah. Yes. Right. Yeah.
I think so. Pretty sure. I also forgot that something that happens here is that Snake is able to get the gun away from Volgan. Like Volgan has pulled on him, and the boss shows up and beats his ass once again.
Beats
so
his
good.
ass. So I'm on the wiki. He survives. Oh, you see it's off screen. That's what happens. So okay. But we'll get to that in a second then, I guess. And one other thing I want to say about this scene in just real quick.
Yeah.
Before Volgan gets there, when he finds Snake with Sokolov. Snake sees Eva with Sokolov.
Yes.
And he gives her a roll of film of some sort.
Which you're not really sure what that is up to this point.
Yeah.
So all that happens, and then you get your ass kicked. You manage to kind of dispatch Volgan momentarily, but then he beats your ass again. And then you go into this scene where Snake has been captured and is like maybe being tortured up to this point, and like a bunch of stuff happens in here. There's kind of a lot that goes on here.
You hear Sokolov being tortured and apparently killed.
Volgan comes in and starts like throwing accusations at Snake of like, what do you know about the philosophers and shit like that? Like, what are you doing here for them? And Snake and the player at this point are like, I have no fucking clue.
Yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about, Magic Man.
Yeah, so Volgan like is like, you don't know who these people are, but this is like kind of a big deal for us that they've been trying to amass something called the Philosopher's Legacy. Which I think they talk about it at this point. It's like the philosophers were a group of people that I think it's after World War I had like formed and were like, we need to amass a shitload of money so that we can kind of like pull the strings so like something this horrendous doesn't happen
It's like
anymore.
The true leaders of America, Russia, and China.
Exactly, yeah. So it's like just rich and powerful people, not even like politicians, but just like people who have a lot of money. And essentially the quote unquote philosopher's legacy is just this huge sum of money.
Which is, do you remember how much it was?
I don't.
It is $100 billion. So half of Elon's net worth. So Elon is essentially double the big bad of this game.
That feels canonical, yeah.
But
Jesus.
I think I did inflation adjusted it for present day, and it's about $854 billion in today's money.
Sure, a lot of money.
Which is like if the top 4 to 5 richest people in the world got together and amassed their fortunes, that would do it. That
would do it. What Volgan had said is like he used to run like essentially the money laundering operation for the philosophers.
His dad.
To like his dad, yes, correct. To essentially clean their money so that nobody knew where it was going, but that he has taken control over, I think, some of it.
He has the microfilm that has all the transactions and information about where all the money is.
Right. But yeah, he's like freaking out that Snake is somehow connected to this group, and Snake does not know anything about this. In this scene, Ocelot is also like, hey, Tatiana, what's your deal? Why are you acting so weird? Like, are you maybe a traitor? Or are you maybe a spy?
Yeah.
And he's like, I'll let the guns decide. And then he juggles his revolvers with one bullet in one of them and is like, you will see if you're a real traitor if it shoots you.
It's super Russian roulette.
Yeah, turbo Russian roulette. Yeah. And somehow Snake knows, like, I can see that the bullet is coming up, that she's about to get shot.
Both Snake and the boss know.
Yes, the boss also notices this. And Snake kind of like pushes himself while he's tied up into Ocelot before he can shoot Ava, gets in the way, but also loses an eye in the process. And then the boss is like, you're so dumb, Ocelot. Like, you got to get out of here. This is so fucking stupid.
You big dummy.
Yeah. And I think, is it the boss who frees you at this point?
No, you don't get freed. You get taken back to your cell.
Yes.
That's what it is. So she doesn't free him, but she's talking to him. And if you press R1 at the right time, instead of oogling, you get good information.
Yes. Yeah. You get the like codec number for the Sorrow.
Yeah. The Sorrow being a dead member of the Cobras, whose ghost you see every now and then if you look through Snake's eyes. He's just kind of lurking in the background.
She does tell Snake you need to run, though, in this moment. Like, she doesn't cut him down, but essentially she's saying,
she just says, run.
Yeah, get out of here. Like, you don't need to be here.
Yeah.
Ava does at this moment also say, though, like I have a way out of this. Just like go west and we can leave.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're able to get out of it after that point. How do you get out of the cell? I forget.
You can either, I think, because the boss shoots you with your fake death pill.
Yes.
So I think you can either do that, or you use the frequency that the Sorrow showed you, and that opens the door. That's what I did, at least.
Yes. Yeah. I think there's a way to make yourself vomit too.
I don't know. Maybe if you eat the ration that they give you.
Yeah, something like that.
They throw one in there at you, and the Russian rations are usually kind of gross from what Snake says.
Yeah. I think the first time I did it, I did do the fake death pill, which like it boots you out to the like game over screen and everything, which is just like so fun and cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of ways to get out of there. Anyway, so you do that, you kind of get like a little bit found out, like Ocelot is onto your case that you have escaped. There's like a scene straight out of The Fugitive where like you're in one of these sewers and Ocelot's like, I finally found you. I'm so excited to finally shoot you with this bullet that I've got around my neck. I've been hanging on to it.
So good.
And Snake just like jumps off the end of this like river or this sewer into a river below.
Yeah.
So what happens after that is like Snake crash lands into the river and maybe passes out. It's kind of unclear what happens in here, and that's on purpose.
Yes.
But essentially you wake up and you are face to face with the Sorrow.
The Sorrow, yeah. And you're back in the mangrove swamp.
Yes, yeah, which is a place you went to earlier, I think in pursuit of Sokolov at some point.
Yes, yeah.
And the Sorrow gives you a very Metal Gear Solid monologue about like people being bad and you're a death walker or whatever. And the boss fight essentially proceeds where you are just walking down this river that like, given how the Sorrow is kind of positioned as like someone who is dead already.
Yeah.
And he is like kind of representing the dead in a lot of ways. Like, I feel like the kind of like purgatory river Styx metaphor is like present here, especially because like, the way that you actually exit this place is there's a couple of ways, but one of them is that you can take the death pill, right?
Take the revival pill.
The revival pill.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. And so like, he may be doing that in real life, but in this interpretation of it, he like has to kind of be reborn in a way. Very cool fight. Very fun.
I wouldn't even call it a fight. It's more like a boss experience.
Yes,
because you can't shoot the Sorrow. His health is already at 0. So it's like the opposite of 2 health bars, right? It is 0 health bars.
No health
bars. You can't shoot him. You can't damage him at all. You're just kind of avoiding different characters. So like if you've this fight is made more difficult depending on how many characters you've killed in the game, actually. So if you've killed a lot of soldiers, you'll see more soldiers coming down the river at you, and you have to dodge them, otherwise they do damage to you. If you're doing like a complete pacifist run, the only people that will come at you are the bosses, the Cobras that you've killed so far. Yeah. So you're just walking down this river trying to dodge these ghost zombie creatures coming at you, and then every once in a while a Cobra comes down the way at you and does some weird freaky stuff only a Cobra can do, and then you just continue marching your way down until the end, and the Sorrow every once in a while like sends a like psionic spiky swirly thing at you that if it hits you does a jump scare. It's just like he screams and then his face like flashes on the screen in front of you, like those old internet pranks that people would play on each other, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a fun little experience. I enjoy this one.
It definitely reminds me of the Psycho Mantis fight in the way that it's like intentionally kind of trying to fuck with you as a player. I think it is not speaking quite as directly to the camera because it's not like, hey, I read your memory card and I know what you did.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the dialogue could be interpreted as talking to the player, but like it seems like he is addressing Snake for most of this, but it's still very cool. I think it still really works and kind of it's just another one of these situations where Metal Gear Solid is like, I wouldn't say this is breaking the fourth wall, but it is trying to kind of confuse you as to what is going on and like, is this real? Is this not real? Should I interpret this as something that is currently happening? Or like, am I in a dream or another world? It's sort of hard to tell, which is just very fun. I think all that stuff is really good. And I think too, just like the connection that the Sorrow has with specifically the boss, which I don't think she's talked about yet.
No, it's revealed in the end.
Yeah, but essentially the relationship that they have is kind of, it makes this point or this moment a little bit more poignant where like, the Sorrow is definitely a close member of the Cobras to the boss. And so I think fighting him is interesting. It's worth noting too that like and a handful of other times during the game, whenever it's like really raining, the boss will note that like, oh, it's raining blood. Is the Sorrow crying or whatever? Like, yeah, which is, I thought maybe more of a physical response, and part of that is made physical at the very end of the game when you fight the final boss. But still, it's a very like interesting kind of like imagery that they're playing with here.
Yeah, she will call out to him sometimes.
Yes, yeah.
Just like, is that you, the Sorrow? And then you can look through Snake's eyes and you see the ghost floating behind her. You're like, oh, it is the Sorrow.
It is actually him.
It is actually him.
So yeah, I think usually the way that I end up, or I don't know if it's actually required. Do you have to take the revival pill to get through
That's the
this?
only way that I know of getting through this bit.
Same, yeah. So I wonder if that's the only way you can.
And I think it's he really hints at that, of like that being the way to get out of it, because he says multiple times at the end before he kills you, in quotations, you have to wake up. And it says wake up in the description for the revival pill. So it's just really hinting at it.
Again, a really fun way to tie the narrative to the mechanics of like, you have the things that you need almost immediately, but it's cool that the game is kind of waiting for you to discover that, rather than like you getting a codec call being like, Snake, you need to use the revival pill.
Yeah.
It's like, if you care to look around, it's in the game, the answer.
The psychic fights in these MGS games are always so fun. So it's always like a little puzzle. You just have to think about it the right way.
Yeah, it's usually a puzzle, and it is usually unsettling in one way or another. So anyway, you make it through this fight, and Snake like wakes up in the river underwater, and then, kind of gets to the surface, coughs up a bunch of water, and is like, oh my God, holy shit, I'm alive. And I think kind of suggesting that he did actually take the revival pill in real life.
Yeah.
To kind of like jolt him back alive for a second.
Yeah, maybe it's like an epinephrine pill or something like that.
Something,
just jolts the heart back a bit.
Yeah.
That's my headcanon, at least.
Anyway, he shows up like in a pretty like earlier part of the game, essentially like a location that I think you've been to before, or like you've seen before.
I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, I'm not positive about that, but you're back in the forest.
You're back in the forest for sure. And then you go to Eva calls you and you go to a waterfall and meet up with her. Is that right?
Yeah, you do. It's kind of a cool scene because he shows up just like he's gotten his ass really kicked at this point. Like he still doesn't have anything over his missing eye.
Yeah.
He's still very bloody from the torture and has like maybe drowned. And I feel like there's like a lot of religious imagery in this game. And I feel like a lot of it is a sort of sense of loss of innocence, but then like definitely some rebirth moments here.
Absolutely.
Especially with him kind of coming out all, with his ass kicked and regaining the ability to breathe and shit like that. It all kind of has this like infant imagery to it.
Yeah. No eye.
Right. Yeah. He's like physically changed in some way or another. And I feel like this is also kind of the turning point in the game to the last little bit of the video game itself. But yeah, you meet up with Ava and she's like, hey, I've got a plan for how we're going to like finish the job here. I've got this like explosive that we're going to sneak in, put on the Shagohod and get out of there.
C3, not C4.
C3. Yes. Different thing. There's also a weirdly horny scene, and half of it I think is definitely her manipulating Snake, and half of it is doing the same thing that the game has been doing before of like, but do you want to see her in her underwear?
Yeah. Right.
And like, so here's the thing. Part of it is like spy movies from the 60s are horny like that, like James Bond movies, they're constantly doing this like double entendre thing.
Yeah.
And I think some of that can be playfully fun, like Snake is chowing down on actual snakes in this scene. He like caught some, cooked him, and is just like like chewing through these things.
Eats one, looks at the one being cooked, is like, fuck yeah, I'm eating that. Takes it and just starts chowing again.
Yes, yeah. And he's like, oh, you don't eat snakes on missions? And she's like, oh, I'd like to eat one, like that kind of shit. And
yeah.
I'm much more okay with that because it's corny and kind of like in line with the movies of the era. But again, the stuff that gets in my way is the sort of oogly stuff that does still happen here.
Yeah, sure does.
Despite the fact, like, we'll make reference to this in the future, but she's definitely still manipulating him, right? Like, she's trying to get him on his side. Like, hey, we're so close. Just please stick with me on this one. She doesn't say that, but her actions to me read as like, I can't have you losing faith right now because we're so close to being done.
This is the final stretch. Let's go.
Yes. Yeah. So from there, they like go to bed, wake up, and there's like a ladder in behind the waterfall that leaves you back up into Doogragdaba. And you pretty much do similar stuff. You like sneak through here one more time.
Yep.
And then plant some C3 on the Shagohod. You're like in there doing it. And kind of once it's sort of hilarious. You also dress up as like a mechanic or something like that, which is very good to get in there. But regardless, at this moment, Ava is also discovered as a spy. And like Volgan and Ocelot and the boss show up to kind of confront you of like, hey, dipshit, we found your stuff. Like, what are you doing here? Figured out that Ava's a spy.
Yeah.
And Volgan's like, we should definitely kill her. Like, that is a thing we should do. And the boss offers to do it instead. She's like, let me handle this. Like, you don't need to like do this or whatever.
Yeah.
And like, I think it's kind of suggested that earlier in the game, it was like, hey, we have a traitor in our midst. And, you know, Volgan's like, all right, we clearly found the traitor. I can mostly trust everybody else here.
Yeah.
So like, you can do it, boss. And she's like, all right. So she takes Ava away.
Well, she takes Ava away, and when she does that, she whispers to Ava, leave everything up to me.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's like clear that the boss has something cooking.
Something going on here. This is also where Volgan talks about like what the philosopher's legacy is exactly, which is, I don't know if we mentioned it last time because it's been a couple of days since we've recorded this.
Yeah.
Little peek behind the scenes, but it's just it's a shitload of money. That powerful people in the USSR, the USA, and China pooled together. Yeah, I think we did talk about this.
We talked about it a little bit. It's half of Elon's net worth. So
yes,
it's $100 billion.
exactly.
Quite literally a villainous amount of money.
Yes, yeah. Anyway, this is also where you fight Volgan. It's like the first boss fight you have with him. It's like fun. You just run around and shoot him. He's like trying to punch you a lot. With his lightning powers.
He's like sending out lightning bolts at you. He's trying to punch you. You just dodge it and shoot him.
Yeah, it's like
pretty straightforward fight.
Yeah, not the most complicated boss fight in a Metal Gear game.
No.
So when you fight him and he's like kind of on the ropes and like Ocelot's standing up above the fight. Like you kind of went down a little bit in this like weird little elevator, and Volgan tells Ocelot like, hey dude, you need to shoot him, shoot Snake and just be done with this. And Ocelot's like, nah, I'm not gonna do that. Kind of like at this point betraying him, because I guess maybe it seems like Volgan's like done or beaten in some way. And so Ocelot's like, I'm just going to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
And so you as Snake get out of there too. Ava shows up on her motorcycle and is like, let's go, bro.
This is a good moment. This is a good moment.
Let's get out of here.
Yeah. Get in, loser. We're getting out of here.
Get in, loser. We're destroying the Shagohod. So you get in and you kind of start to get away. I think they do blow up the C3.
Yes. Yeah, there's a scene where like everyone is getting blown up, or everyone's blowing up behind them. You see Ocelot. Ocelot does one of his other like finger guns towards Snake a couple times. And also during the fight with Volgan, Ocelot starts not listening to Volgan. Did you mention that?
Yeah, just he's like betraying orders essentially.
Yeah. So yeah, they do manage to set off the C3, but the C3 wasn't actually attached to the Shagohod. It was attached to some fuel tanks around the Shagohod.
Yes.
So who knows if it actually blew up?
It did not.
It did not.
Spoiler alert, it didn't blow up because shortly after you get out of the building, the full ass Shagohod shows up chasing you. And the next couple of minutes are just like a odd rails vehicle shooting level.
Yes. Where
you're just trying to like run out of this base while shit's exploding and the Shagohod is chasing you.
A very good moment. I like this moment.
I'm like mixed on it. The first time I played it, I was hyped. Like, this is very cool. I think when I played it this time, I was like, unfortunately, I kind of know what happens here.
Sure.
And I would just like to skip to the end of it.
Gotcha.
But it's like, it's fun regardless. Like it's very the end of Halo where you're just kind of trying to get out of there while shit's exploding.
Yeah, you had to kill some people on the way. You had to shoot some folks.
Yeah, you're blowing stuff up. Again, it's similar to the end of 1 where a similar thing happens and you're just trying to like escape Shadow Moses. So yeah, you do end up like getting out of there for the most part, but Volgan in the Shagohod at this point chases you across this like bridge, and I think you try and blow it up, right?
There's some more C3 on the bridge.
Yes, yeah.
And so you and Eva get across the bridge, and then you get into a little sniper position. You have to wait for the Shagohod to get across, to be on the bridge, and then you blow up or shoot both of the charges on there. It's a pretty satisfying moment.
It is very satisfying, despite the fact it doesn't end up working.
Yes. Yeah.
It. I think it like hurts it enough that it's not quite as agile at that point.
You get the back end of the Shagohod comes off, so it's just like the Hod afterwards. It's not the Shagohod, it's just Hod.
Yeah.
So it's just like the front portion that's very quick and like the cockpit, but like the big butt is gone.
Yeah, true. Which results in a fun little boss fight between you, Volgan, on top of the the Hod.
Controlling it because he punched into it and is like lassoed some wires out of it and is using his electrical powers to control it, which is very cool.
Very cool. Absolutely ridiculous. Totally unrealistic and sick as hell.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Awesome.
So he's controlling it. He's on top of it, just kind of like standing up there and firing at you. Ava's like doing some motorcycle stuff during this fight to kind of like distract him so you can shoot him.
She's just going around trying to distract him.
Yeah, exactly.
Going in circles. Yeah.
Anyway, eventually you do beat him, or at least for a moment. And I think like there's like a storm that rolls in, and he's like, lightning doesn't scare me, like it's just gonna power me up or something, and then gets struck by lightning on this thing and fully dies.
He gets lit on fire.
Yes,
his burning body is seen on top of the Shagohod or the Hod.
Yeah, it's a pretty wild moment. But all things considered, I like that his hubris is his downfall, right? Like he's like, I'm too fucking badass for any of this, and it's not gonna hurt me. I like that. But all things considered, like I kind of found him not the most intimidating figure in a Metal Gear game.
I feel like he was very intimidating in the beginning when he's just like walking around crackling with lightning. But I think the boss is much more intimidating to me.
Yes. And I think that's on purpose. I think like she's supposed to be the one that you're like, I don't know if intimidated is the right word, but like a kind of fearful respect in a way.
Yes. You're the one. She's the one that you need to be wary of.
Yes. Yeah. Which, speaking of which, you start to escape with Ava on this motorcycle. It turns out that she's like hurt a little bit. I think she got like shot in the process of running away.
I think she was fine. And then they get in a car crash and then they crash and then she gets stabbed by a tree.
Yes.
A branch during the crash. Yeah.
Yeah. And Snake's like, it's not looking great. We should like actually go to try and like save your life. And so she's like, it's fine. I have this big ass ship that we can use to get out of here.
A wig.
A wig. And she's like, it's just up the road. So let's go there. They do. And like just off to the side of the road is this field of white flowers.
Yeah.
And at which the boss is also standing in. And the MiG is like, or the wig is just up the road. Snake's like, go get it. Yeah. Go get it ready. I need to talk to her. And so you go over there, and this leads into just about the dopest shit in this game.
It's so good.
It's so good.
Because Eva has previously told you, like, the boss is waiting for you at the lake. Because when Eva comes and saves you when the base is exploding, Snake's like, what the fuck? You're here? And she's like, the boss let me go, dude. I don't know. But she said like she needs to talk to you. And she's by the lake and that's where we're going. So get in, loser. We're going to go see your mom. So she takes you there. Then some real cool shit happens.
It's all so good. Like, talk about iconic scenes too. I feel like of all the scenes in this game, this one is really front of mind when I'm thinking about it. Like just the imagery of it all. I think it's a very cool kind of like final moment of a game too. There's a lot, like you do end up fighting her, and like there's just so much remorse in both of them of like, we don't want to be doing this, but this is what we have to do right now.
Yes.
And like, normally, I don't like that explanation of like, well, it's the final boss, so we have to fight. But you actually do. The situation that you're in with like your countries and who you're like allied with right now, it's like if you both come back alive, this isn't going to work. Like you're both going to be branded as like traitors and either killed or extradited to a country you don't want to be, or the mission will be marked a failure by either of the people you're working for. Exactly. So like, it's not something you can do.
Politics demand that there is one who leaves.
Yes. Yeah. And she talks about that directly beforehand. There's a lot of talking here.
Yeah.
And like, I don't remember if this is the game that got Hideo the most backlash for having long cutscenes.
I feel like it was 4.
4 is indulgent.
Yeah.
in a way that I feel like this one is not. Because like none of these struck me as too long when I was playing it.
Yeah, I did think it was funny though how many times you think it's going to be done and then it just kicks into another cutscene.
A different
one. It's very similar, very reminiscent of the end of Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, where it's just like, and that's that's not it. That's not it. Okay, we're still going. And that was we're still going here.
Yeah, that there could have been a lot of endings here, but they opted not to.
You pretty much get all of the boss's backstory and motivations at the very end right here.
Yes.
And even not all of them.
There's still more
talk about later.
Yeah, which like I actually think works here. I like in any other story, I would be like, why didn't I get this earlier? But so much of the boss's gambit in this game is trying to keep her actual motivations a secret.
Yeah.
And not tell people information that could compromise their situation. So like, the first thing she does is she starts kind of like outlining that like true enemies, quote unquote, don't really exist.
Yeah.
That they're just created by the context of the moment. All of these Metal Gear games have some word theme attached to them.
Sure.
The first one is gene because of all the gene splicing and shit.
Yep.
The second one is meme because of the classical definition of a meme, meaning like information that spreads very quickly.
Yeah.
And then this one is scene And I think the idea with that one is that like you're born into a certain kind of like moment and scene in history, and that like your enemies are defined by that placement. That like
Gotcha. So scene like SCENE.
yes,
Okay.
exactly. That like the people who you think are your enemies are really not. Like there is a lot of common ground between the two of you, but it's just like politics demands that you two hate each other.
Yes.
She brings up that both her and Snake were used as like kind of nuclear test subjects. He was in Bikini Atoll, I think is where his was.
Yes.
And hers was in Nevada. They were both exposed to a lot of like radiation at that point. And so there's this kind of like connection of we've both been used by the government in this very specific way. And then gives the story of the Sorrow in that he was a part of the Cobras at some point, but that she was given an order from, it turns out, the Philosophers, this like very powerful group, that she had to kill him. Like that was the mission that she was being sent on. And so like it was like she said, we both knew both of us can't walk out of here. Like it's just not going to work like that. And so like what do we do? I think it's also like kind of suggested that she shot him like in the eye, which is why like the kind of imagery of him bleeding out of his eye always comes up in the game. But I don't remember if it was like super specific about that. I think it's just kind of like hearsay.
Yeah. Alluded to, or just that he's sad.
Yes. Yeah. Either one kind of works, right? So she talks about that and then talks about how the original Philosophers have like long since died. Like none of them are around anymore, but their like money keeps getting used to like prop up these wars. And now like Volgan is kind of using some of it. And the boss mentions that like each of these conflicts reverberates and causes new conflicts to show up. And that like this money and power is reinforcing that cycle. That like each time something horrible happens, like the comparison she makes, which you know is real in the real world, which is that the ending of World War I is what caused parts of World War II to start. Right, like the way to carve up Europe after World War I caused a lot of resentment from those countries and thereby, you know, caused a new conflict and started World War II. And the boss is like, the Philosophers, or at least the people who are in control of their money, are trying to keep that cycle moving forward of just like endless conflict. So there's that. I'm literally going in order at this point. The jumps around are bananas.
It's all over the place. Yeah.
She also mentions that she was pregnant during D-Day at Normandy. Again, she and her Cobras like helped fight World War II. And she mentions it's the Sorrow's baby. And she also says, I gave birth on the field of battle, which is like, I'm sorry, you were 9 months pregnant? You were at Normandy? What are we doing?
And charging on the beaches of Normandy at the same time.
Yes. Yeah.
She built different.
So
Greatest generation for a reason.
So, you know, apparently she literally gave birth on the field of battle. But she said that the Philosophers took her child, that she like doesn't know who it is. And she like shows this like very gnarly scar on her like chest and stomach to prove it.
Yeah. I'm just like, that is not a typical C-section scar. It's like going up to her chest. It's oh God.
I will say though, looks fucking sick. It's so cool. And like,
it is cool.
Again, it can't be ignored that it is in the shape of a snake.
It's in the shape of a snake, yeah.
It's serpentine in the way that it looks.
And I think, you know, looking back on it, it is kind of in the exact same spot that Eva is always exposing to Snake.
Yes.
So I feel like there's some sort of symbolism there of like, these are two very different people with two very different lives.
Yeah. I was going to say it's the one time in this game that I think they use a body pretty responsibly and in a way that communicates a lot of story, right?
Yeah.
Like the boss is like, look at how fucked up they made me. You know, like here's a physical evidence of the things that they have taken from me.
Right.
And like, you know, the outfit that she wears during the game, it's like almost a full body suit. And so you have no chance of seeing this. Again, just kind of feeling like she has been hiding so much from everybody. Anyway, she says like, all right, we have to fight. Like that is what we have to do here. She says, I've given you everything, but now the last thing you have to take is my life, which is just like, that's hard as fuck, man. That's cool. That's pretty fucking cool.
Sure is.
And so she gets on the radio and is like, all right, start the mission or whatever. And she's like, all right, I just called in a bombing run on our location in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Like either both of us are going to die or one of us is.
Yeah.
Like you decide essentially.
If you can't beat me in that amount of time, then neither of us deserve the title of boss.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
That's fucking cool as hell. That's so sick.
Yeah.
I'm usually so not about these kind of like final showdowny boss fights in video games, but like, God, they just made this one work so good.
This one's really good. Yeah.
And so you do end up like actually having to fight her. And most of the way that you have to do that is via CQC. Like shooting at her doesn't work very well.
No, she just deflects it somehow. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, it's very confusing. So it's this very cool fight where you're kind of like hiding among these white flowers and like ducking behind trees and shit to try and like outmaneuver her and sneak around her.
Yeah.
In a way that's just like, it's so cool that like, again, the Volgan fight was just like shoot rocket launchers at the big tank. Whereas the fight with the boss is like, do the sneaky stuff that you've been doing the whole game, but just like better now.
Yeah. Yeah. Better and more precisely.
Yes. It's really, really cool. And again, just iconic as hell. I really like it.
It's so good for a lot of different reasons, right? The flowers are the same color as the boss's suit. And so when you're sneaking through them, whenever you're going through a large grass in this game and prone, like crawling across the ground, you go into first person view. So when you are in first person view going through these white flowers, you cannot tell where the boss is at
absolutely
all.
Not.
You got to be using your tools, like your thermal goggles or something else to find her, your AP sensor, your sonar, something, because it's just, it looks so much like her, and just the way that it moves in the wind confuses you just so well that you just can't rely on your eyes at all.
They're also not playing music at this moment either.
Yeah.
Like at the beginning of the fight, it's you just hear the wind, which is so intimidating and works so well.
You could hear her like moving around every now and then and saying things like off in the distance.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so good. And then when you do
really,
spot her,
really
you're like, oh, fuck, there she is. And she's just like, all right.
Especially if she doesn't see you yet.
You're like, all right, time to go into real killer mode.
Yeah. It's really, really good. And like I said, I didn't really learn the mechanics of how to do CQC when I played this the first time.
Yeah.
So it was much easier this time, because when I played the first time, I was like, dude, why can't I shoot her? This game fucking sucks. Which is like, of course not true.
Exactly. But, Chase then turned the game off and went back to courting Ashley from Mass Effect 1.
God, that probably is a pretty similar timeline, huh?
I think
I was
so.
right around the same moment. God.
Anyways,
so you do end up beating her, and it's just really great. But again, another really iconic moment. She gives you one of these film slides that she says like, this is part of the Philosopher's Legacy, which is just like a shitload of money.
Well, it is the Philosopher's Legacy. It's Volgan gives that to her and it's like, hey, keep this safe. And then she leaves with it. And now she's giving it to Snake.
It ends up not being the entire amount, but it's a lot of it. But she's like, here you go. This is yours now. She makes reference to the phrase of there's only room for one boss and one Snake, which is cool. And I think is just kind of a little reference to the fact that like eventually this Snake will also turn into Big Boss, and there will be another guy who rises up in the place of him.
It's like the Sith, the rule of two.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Which is cool, and I think it speaks a little bit to the like cycle that she's talking about of like this one conflict will turn into another, which ends up causing another. And you know, the place that we know the boss goes eventually is that his like resentment and anger about being manipulated into killing her is kind of what turns him into the monster that he ends up being. And so it's like the fallout of this violence causes him to cause more violence, right?
Yep.
Because at some point he is a bad guy. Like it's not like he's this cool dude that just like is misunderstood. Like he does end up being quite bad by the time you get to the Metal Gear games. But you know, it just kind of goes to show that she's right about a lot of the shit, at least in this universe. Okay, so they force you to stare. She's like, all right, well, last thing, here's my gun. You got to shoot me.
Yeah.
The first time I did it, I was like just waiting for the cutscene to do it, but they make you do it as the player.
You have to do it.
You have to do it. The first time I played it, I was like, damn, that's really sad and brutal. And the second time, my first reaction was, I wish they gave me a choice in this, but I actually think it's very good that they don't.
Yeah.
Because like, not only are you as Snake, like the character Snake in this moment is like I am being forced by the government to do this job. Like, my mission is to kill her.
Yeah.
And she keeps saying, like, do your duty, dude. Like, this is the thing that you are sent here to do. You have to finish the job. And I think if they gave me a choice, it would be kind of hollow. That the game is also forcing you as the player to kill her too.
Yeah, they're saying it with their chest. They're not giving you an option to do something different. It is a story that they're trying to tell.
Yeah, there's not like a good ending if you do the right stuff or whatever, or everybody gets away. It's like, she's right. You do have to do this if you want things to work out. Because like, if you don't, you'll probably just be court-martialed or killed or something. Like, it won't go the way that you want it to. And so it's very powerful, I think, that they hammer on this feeling of like, you don't have control in the way that you think you do, which is a big overarching theme from both of the other games at this point, of like, the game's kind of questioning, like, do you as the player have any agency in this thing? And I think that with the other ones, the way that they said that was a little bit different. The thing, like, they said the same thing of, do you have agency in this, but it was put differently. Yeah. And I think in this one, it's the same deal. It's, you are forced to do this thing that you don't want to, and Snake is also forced to do it. Yep. And becomes resentful of his government as a result. So you do that. The field turns red, which is kind of, like I said, this reference to like, maybe the sorrow is crying and like, you know, raining blood or whatever. Her horse also shows up.
Her horse does show up. It starts
and
neighing
lets out a
sadly.
mighty neigh. It's like corny a little bit, but it's also like, this is kind of sick as well. Like, it's pretty good.
It's very Hideo Kojima. It's over the top.
Yes.
It's stylized and ridiculous, but you get why he's doing it.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's pretty much the end of it. The only thing that I wanted to mention about this like interaction is that she brought up a few times, like, I am trying to make the world whole again.
Yeah.
I'm trying to like stop this endless cycle of conflict and like do something different. And the interpretation of that phrase is kind of what leads to a lot of other shit in other video games down the road.
Yeah.
Because there's a couple of characters who are trying to interpret what that meant in very different ways. And so like, you know, again, sort of religious figures here of somebody dying and people kind of fucking up the interpretation of what they were actually trying to say here.
Sure.
And both of those things not, you know, being totally right or totally wrong. But yeah, great stuff. Really cool boss fight and kind of wrap up for the game here. There's a little bit more that happens, but like, to me, that is like the climax and the kind of biggest part of the game.
Absolutely.
Here.
This is the climax. You get on the Wig with Ava and you're taking off, and then Ocelot jumps on the plane with you and he does his super Russian roulette thing again with you. And his gun jams. And then he jumps off with mutual respect for Snake between the two of them.
They have like a duel essentially in the plane. Like they first start fighting, but then like realize that like, I think he dropped his gun or something, and Ocelot's like, okay, what if we just leave this up to chance and you get to choose one of two guns that you think might have one of the bullets in it? And I think that there's a lot of outcomes there, that like there's different choices or different things can happen depending on like your choices and how many people you killed during the game.
Sure.
But it ends up that the bullet is a blank.
Yeah.
The
that's
one
right.
that
It's
he's
a blank,
had.
Not a
Yes. But yeah, there's this kind of mutual respect that comes out of there. Snake gives his name as John here.
Ocelot is a Domska, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. I think he sort of, I don't know, there's some recognition of like, I probably can't trust this guy, but like, we kind of did just fight and have like the conclusion that we wanted to. So like, maybe we don't actually have to be that intensive enemies. I think kind of alluding to the thing that the boss was talking about before of like, I don't think we actually have to fight if we don't want to. Yeah. But yeah, he just dips and then like he lands on the water and like rolls for a while.
Into the water. Yeah.
It's very ridiculous. Anyway, the MiGs start showing up, the actual like planes, and Khrushchev somehow calls them off. I'm kind of unclear about how that happened, like how he got word about this shit, but who knows?
Who knows? Spies.
Anyway, so you get out of there and you spend the night with Eva.
Yeah. In a nice little cabin in Alaska.
Yes. Yeah. So it's like, you know, a little kissy, little lovey-dovey.
Very James Bond moment.
A very James Bond, yeah. But sure enough, by morning, Ava has left and she's like, she leaves him like a message, essentially, this like tape where she explains like a lot of the rest of the story.
Yes.
So a couple of major things. She says, hey, I took the Philosopher's Legacy, sorry. That's just what happened.
Yeah.
And Snake pulls out the one that he thinks is a fake at this point from his like pocket. and kind of tosses it aside like, well, shit, I guess that's fake.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll come back to that in a second. But she's like, I took the Philosopher's Legacy. I'm actually, in fact, a Chinese spy, not a USSR or a American spy. I'm neither.
I was never the person that you were supposed to meet up with. Who knows what happened to those people? They didn't show up.
Yes, but I've sort of been like working at this for a while because she was like kind of manipulating Sokolov for a while, like weeks before the mission even happened. And so
she was manipulating Sokolov, she was manipulating Volgin, she was manipulating Snake, all of them.
Yeah, and so like I don't know if it's the case of the Chinese government was just like saw the opportunity and they're like, okay, I guess, I don't know, let's go see if this will work or whatever. But they must have known that the Philosopher's Legacy was there in some form and they're like, all right, go get it. So she does that. She also mentions sort of the true comings and goings of the boss. She had said that the boss was not like a true defector to Volgin, but that she was sent by the philosophers to recover the legacy as well. Like that was her original mission the first time you encountered her. And those Davy Crockett missiles, the like nuclear RPGs, were used as like proof of her defection, but that was also set up by the philosophers. Yeah. And but like Volgin using one of them was not expected. That was like not a thing that they had predicted happening. Yeah. And so the plan changed and they're like, okay, we're going to brand the boss as a traitor. And what she has to do to make sure this all works out okay is let herself be killed by Snake to save face for the US, essentially. And so they're like, that's your mission, is to die by Snake's hands, right? Yeah. And so all of this stuff about her saying like, you got to get the fuck out of here and like disassembling his gun and essentially the whole game just kind of kicking his ass was, it seems like a gambit to make him want to do it more of like, I'm still kind of training him and making sure that he's in the right position to eventually kill me to just do our missions. You know, like this is a thing that I have to do. Again, speaking to the kind of like unfortunate situation that these soldiers have been put in where they just have to do the duty that they are tasked with. And she was, you know, loyal to this group of people to the very end. But Ava in this recording says like she's going to get branded as a traitor forever. Yeah. Like the world will not know that she was actually very loyal to the end.
She's going to go down as a war criminal and a traitor.
Yes. Yeah.
Because they framed her for blowing up Sokolov's research facility in the beginning of the game. Like they pinned what Volgin did on her.
Right. Again, I think like trying to kind of keep Volgin a little bit more of a quiet situation. Yeah. And they're like, no, it's all the boss and the fucking Cobras. They're the bad guys.
And was it the philosophers who said her, or was it the US government?
That, I mean, like, so I think that mission came from the philosophers, but who is actually in charge of them at this point is like kind of unclear to me. But I sort of suspect a lot of this is the US. Yeah. Right. At least that's how it kind of ends after in the post-credits scene. Yeah. So the last couple things that happen, Snake is given the title Big Boss.
Yeah, in a very by the president,
by LBJ himself,
in the Oval Office, in front of all the most powerful people in the government, and he says with a straight face, "I'm going to give you the title of Big Boss."
So silly and like ridiculous, but at the same time, the nickname Big Boss does kind of read as a nickname that someone would have in the 60s.
Yeah, I see it.
You hear these weird dopey nicknames for people in the kind of like 50s and 60s. I'm like, God, that sounds really weird and kind of like just not very cool. But this reads as one of those, you know? Yeah. So I don't know. It's so goofy and so silly, and they had to arrive there eventually. But I think the fact that they had called, you know, Joy the boss the whole game kind of leads to, it makes sense why they would suddenly call him Big Boss. But yeah, it's ridiculous.
He's better than a boss. He's a big boss.
Yeah. Anyway, so he leaves, Snake leaves, like, fuck this. I don't like this at all. Like, there's clearly a lot of animosity towards
He's not wanting to shake people's hands.
No.
He looks grumpy the whole time.
Even Zero's in the room with him and he kind of brushes him off and like walks past him.
Zero, Sig, and Dan Paramedic are all there and they kind of look at him as he leaves, kind of like, oh, wow, that was kind of weird.
Because at this point he knows that this was all a setup, right? Like he knows that the US government knew that the boss wasn't a traitor. Yeah. But had to make sure that he did it anyway. Again, sort of you are seeing the contrast between the beginning of the game where he's like this gun nerd Green Beret who's like, I'm so here to do the mission, to this guy who is like, I have been betrayed at every turn by the people who I trusted the most. So like, fuck all of this. I'm not about this anymore. Then he goes to the unmarked grave of who I think you're supposed to assume is the boss.
Yeah.
Puts her wild gun back on the grave, and also a set of flowers, and salutes the boss. An image that will come back up again in MGS4.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of how the end of the game works. Just kidding, a post-credit scene.
I was about to say the post-credits, yeah.
So you hear Ocelot talking. He's talking to this dude. I'm assuming it's Brezhnev, or at least somebody who represents Brezhnev, who is this like was a real world kind of political enemy of Khrushchev, and ended up like deposing him in 1964. Who's the dude who has mostly been like working with Ocelot to kind of like fuck Volgin up and play him in a certain way so that Khrushchev does end up looking weak enough to depose him.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's not a real thing that happened in the real world, but like in the real world, Khrushchev was deposed by Brezhnev. And so, yeah, Ocelot's like, no, it's totally cool. Like, you know, we've got them in our palm of our hand. We know a lot about, you know, their kind of comings and goings and this sensitive information about what really happened there. It also says like Khrushchev is done. Like this guy is not going to be in power after this. Again, kind of referring to the idea that like the whole reason you went on this mission in the first place was because Khrushchev was like, I'm trying to save my ass right now.
Yeah.
So here's the 3 things I need you to do so that I don't lose political power. And then of course the shit that you end up doing loses him political power. So it's like, again, hammering on the theme of like the shit that you're doing didn't really, it didn't matter in the way that you thought it did.
Yeah. You didn't end up accomplishing what you sought out to accomplish at all. You completed the mission, but you failed at the same time.
Yes, yeah. So he hangs up the phone and then calls some person in the CIA, some director of the CIA, and is like, yeah, bro, hey, they definitely don't suspect me as a triple agent or whatever.
So good. He's always tripling, quadrupling agenting people.
Yes, yeah. He suggests, like, I've been working for the CIA, in fact, the whole time, trying to undermine people where I could. He also says he was Adam originally.
Oh, that's right.
Which I don't know if he knew that Ava was supposed to be Ava, but I think he may have and was just kind of letting her do her thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was like the original person who was going to meet up with Snake and kind of give him that whole mission, but decided not to, and sort of gestures at the idea that like this has gone great for the US. Like we have some of the Philosopher's Legacy because the one that Ava had was in fact a fake, because I think it's the case that the boss gave her one of the slides and it was a fake, but the one that she gave to Snake was real, and told Ava the one I'm going to give to Snake is fake, so don't bother with it or whatever.
Sure.
And he also, I think, recovered one of them. And so like all of that money is coming back to the US, and essentially like they've got a political ally in deposing Khrushchev, right? Like Brezhnev is like not in the real world, but in this world, now somebody who they can kind of like, they have a relationship with. Yeah. And so he's like, you know, I made it look good for the Russians, but like we have come out really great in this situation. Yeah. So yeah, I think the main reveal there is like he's an asset of the CIA.
Did they ever reveal who the real Eva is?
I don't think so. Yeah. I don't think we ever get that information of like who that was supposed to be.
Okay. Oh,
or at least I didn't catch it if they did.
Yeah. Oh, also one other quick aside, just so it makes sense. Eva, the boss lets Eva go because she recognizes her as being one of the philosophers, or like a philosopher's child.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Because the boss was a child of the philosophers.
Yeah. One of her parents was like one of the original philosophers.
Along with Volgin's. Yeah, Volgin's dad was also one of the original philosophers. So yeah, I think she must have seen like, oh, I know who you're working with. Yeah. So like, I'm going to trust you right now.
And same thing with Eva. Eva grew up in their charm schools, she calls them.
Yes.
The boss was an instructor at those spots. So it all comes back to philosophers, baby.
Yeah. No, it's wild. And this is also, I think it connects back up to the end of 2, where like Otacon is talking to Snake and is like, oh, I found it's not the philosophers in that one, it's the Patriots. And he's like, but they've been dead for like 80 years or whatever. Again, signifying that I think the record that they found was a fake in that one, and that it's just saying the philosophers have been dead for a long time. Despite the fact that like those groups are not exactly the same thing.
Yeah. The intrigue.
The intrigue. There's definitely a lot of politicking that happens right at the end of this game.
A lot of stuff going on there. Comes hot and heavy.
Yeah, in very Metal Gear Solid fashion. Just like, here's 20 minutes of exposition of what's been going on the whole time.
You should be taking notes.
It's wild. Like, the first time I played this, absolutely did not even catch half of that. Like,
Yeah.
I bet that I saw that like Ocelot was working for somebody else, Ava was working as a Chinese spy, and Snake kind of got fucked in this whole situation.
It felt like being in an AP US history lecture.
Yes, like, I gotta really pay attention to what's happening here. This is a dense piece of stuff happening. Anyway, so yeah, that's the end of the game. I think like thematically there's a lot to chew on in this game, and we've sort of already talked about a fair bit of it. I think some of the stuff that's loudest for me is definitely the kind of arc of the loss of innocence with Snake. You know, like I said, there's just a lot of imagery of like, you know, Adam and Eva is present. The fact that you're in this kind of like perfect garden a lot of the time with like animals that weren't even meant to be there in the first place.
Sure.
The emphasis on like eating being a thing that is very important, you know? And then obviously the imagery around like snakes and deception and shit like that is like very present here.
Yeah.
And so like I think a lot of that is, I wouldn't say like the text of the game, but it's definitely present. And I don't think there's really much more other than to kind of emphasize the fact that like Snake is a changed person at the end of this game. Like he is a different guy now. It's sort of like sorry, Star Wars fans. It's kind of a better version of like at the end when like Anakin is like, maybe I'll be a bad guy soon at the end of 2 or whatever. It's kind of a similar thing of like, you understand why he is so resentful to the US government at this point.
It really is one of the best villain origin stories.
Yeah, it's a pretty good one. Because you really feel for him. You know, you're like, this guy did get pretty fucked over. And like, again, tying the player to having to shoot the boss, I think is a good way to hammer that shit home, because you feel some ownership over that.
Yeah.
You're like, I also got totally screwed by LBJ in this whole situation, you know?
Hey, LBJ, how many gamers have you screwed today?
Damn, wow, nice.
Well,
what else? Definitely the scene connection of framing a lot of the conflict here. I think at the largest point is the kind of East versus West thing. And, you know, they make mention to the fact that like, hey, in World War II, we were fighting with the Soviets. Like they were on our side. It's just after the fact that we're suddenly enemies. And then showing you kind of on the smaller scale of like the boss with the sorrow. They had been literally like lovers at some point. They have a kid. Did we mention who the boss's kid is?
I don't think so.
It's Ocelot.
It's Ocelot. Yeah.
It's Ocelot.
Is that mentioned in the last bit after the credits?
I totally forget where it's brought up.
I think, is it brought up in this game? I think it's highly alluded to.
I also think that like neither of them know exactly. Like it isn't confirmed that either of them know that like the other is related to them.
Okay, so there's a codec conversation
there you go
between Eva and Snake. Said, yeah, he's the son of some legendary hero or something.
Yes.
The Colonel never told me. All I heard was that his mother was supposedly shot in the gut during battle and that he was born right there with bullets whizzing past him.
There you go.
A pregnant woman in the middle of a battle? They said they stitched her up. The scar was shaped like a snake. At the end of the game, when you kill the boss, the scar that she has on her chest starts moving around and turns into a snake and slithers away in the grass.
Yeah. It's wild.
It's I don't know if it's completely like explicitly said, but it is highly alluded to.
Yeah. That Ocelot is your kid, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. It's interesting because I feel like initially they were setting it up to be like Snake is actually her son. But I think it's pretty cool that it's not.
Yeah.
That it's actually the guy that like the whole game has had kind of like a younger brother chip on his shoulder. You know, like he is the one who thinks that like he's hot shit and has repeatedly gotten his ass kicked.
Yeah.
But like, you know, the quote unquote like imperfect son is the one who is actually kind of carrying on her legacy. Yeah. Again, another very similar theme to the first one where like Liquid Snake has this chip on his shoulder about being the imperfect clone of Big Boss.
Sure.
And thinking that Solid Snake is the one who is the perfect clone, but in fact it's reversed, right? That like Liquid is the perfect one, but you know, he still manages to die.
Yeah.
And is not as good as Solid Snake. So I think that being kind of hammered on again is fun here, that they're kind of saying like it is not necessarily if you're the coolest son that it's the other shit, despite the fact that like the boss spent a lot of time with Snake.
Yeah.
Like they had spent a lot of their like training days together. And so like he probably got a lot more of her learning, or a lot more of the things that she was trying to teach than Ocelot did, because Ocelot, I think the first time he encounters her, so I was like, he's like, the boss, this is what the great legendary warrior. So
yeah,
it's clear that like he hasn't really had a relationship with her.
No, not at all. I think he says that to Snake because he thinks that he's supposed to meet the boss there.
Oh yeah, I think you're right, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild and cool and has repercussions in the rest of the series, but it is interesting to see that like this guy who is largely a quote unquote bad guy for a lot of the series is the actual like biological son of the boss, you know?
Yeah, it's good stuff.
It's good stuff. It's very cool.
This game's good.
It's very good. I like it a lot.
What I really liked about this one in comparison to the other Metal Gear games is how personal of a story it is in comparison.
Yeah.
It very much revolves around the relationships of these people much more than it does the geopolitics at least at its core, right? Because I feel like Metal Gear 1 and 2 are very much like sci-fi, crazy geopolitics. There is some like background on the characters and their relations, but it's largely not the driving force of the story.
Yeah.
But this one really unlocks an emotional undercurrent that the others didn't have, especially like you said, with like the familial ties between these people. It's kind of the Snake and Eva relationship of, you know, what is exactly going on here? Is this manipulation? Is this actually some sort of chemistry here? Maybe it is like based off of something that happens in the later games, but who knows? It just feels much more rounded to me, and I think that's part of why this is one of the more lauded Metal Gear games, because some of the sci-fi stuff that I know you love gets put into the background a little bit so you can connect more with the characters, or at least more easily connect with the characters. It just feels more grounded in that way to me.
Despite the fact I do have a preference for the sci-fi stuff, I totally agree with you that like if you don't like that stuff, or if it's over your head, you've got the emotional kind of undercurrent to grab onto, you know, like, because I think, you know, we say this a fair bit, but the stuff that we like about Kingdom Hearts is when you have to, or when you turn your brain off and just feel what the game is saying, rather than think about like, okay, so if Larksan is the 7th member of the 13th, like none of that shit really ends up mattering. It's just the parts where you're like, I want to help my friends and I'm never going to let go, like that kind of stuff. And I think that this game has more of that, of like, the geopolitics is fun, and I think something that like Hideo would put in these games regardless, but you do have the kind of like drama of like wanting to be accepted by your mentor / mom, kind of the tough situation of like trying to seek that acceptance and her trying to protect you in the way that you don't even know, you know, like that's not something that she's even telling you about until it's time to say goodbye, and like that kind of stuff, and just the personal feeling of being manipulated. It's really present, and I think you're right. It makes sense why someone might connect with this game over a lot of the other ones. Plus, like it's pretty self-contained. You know, like...
Yeah, it's more grokkable.
Yes, yeah, like you don't really have to play the other ones to get what's going on here.
No, you don't have to play any of them. It is the start of everything. It's not referring to any other units or people or events. It's just its own thing. That's it.
I think you get like kind of gestures at some of the future shit that happens, and I think this game is made better if you have played the other ones, but like it is not a requirement.
No.
I think that you can definitely play this and then get what's going on in the other ones, or vice versa. So it makes sense why it would be like, here's the jumping on point for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's a good game. I like this one a lot.
Yeah.
It definitely landed for me. As I've said a couple times, like my taste is for the high sci-fi kind of like nearly incomprehensible parts of 2. But 3 is very good. I understand why this game is a hit.
Yeah. I think this is my favorite personally.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Because it's more grounded. I feel I can connect to the characters more. And I think it's just a very well-made game. I love the forest. The jungle's great.
I'm excited for you to play Peace Walker, because I think you're gonna get more of the shit that you like.
Yeah, I want to walk in peace, baby.
I thought that was I had no idea what that meant but there's like a very Metal Gear reason for that being the name of the game. It's really, really fun. I really like it.
Cool. Hell yeah.
It's a good game. Also, like, this is jumping ahead, but like Yoji Shinakawa gets like his time to shine in that game because there's these like almost comic book cutscenes that they have. Like, it's not the kind of cutscenes in this one where they're 3D and like you're seeing the characters like walk around and talk to each other. It's all in this sort of like comic strip form where like there are people moving inside of the comic strips and then it'll jump to another one. You'll kind of get another thing, but a lot of his art is on display in such a more significant way than it was in any of the other games. So like that rocks. That's very cool. I'm excited to play that one. I'm excited for you to play it because I bet you will like it a lot. We got some questions from our listeners.
Let's do it.
And I would love to answer some of them. So first up, this one's from II94. Favorite camouflages?
I like Flecktarn because I don't know what that means. It's fun to say. Flecktarn.
Got
a tarn? The flex.
Flecktarn. Flecktarn to me feels like a Nordic warrior, like a character in Skyrim.
Flecktarn has the best juniper berries. That was my best Nordic accent.
I've been up in the hills fighting for Flecktarn.
Why do you do that so well?
I don't know. I partially, I think it's that I've just heard those dialogue lines for hundreds of hours. So like, it's just in me at this point.
Okay, so Flecktarn. Flecktarn is a family of 3, 4, 5, or 6 color disruptive camouflage patterns. The most common being the 5 color pattern, consisting of dark gray, gray-green, red-brown, and black over a light green or tan base depending on the manufacturer. So really, it is the worst thing for my eyes, personally. It is the most confusing thing that I could ever look at.
This is the full camouflage for David.
The full camouflage. So that is what Flecktarn is. But it's, man, is it fun to say.
It's it's an evocative phrase. I like it a lot.
It is.
I like banana.
It's just banana?
It's banana. It increases your stamina. You know I like that. But it's so bright and so yellow.
Where do you get this banana?
You have to do all the snake versus monkey missions.
That's right. Are they? Is that only in the original?
I forget. Well, let's see.
Snake versus the Ape Escape monkeys for people who don't know.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It's so wild, and I can't believe that they put that in the game.
It's like a little mini game, right?
Yes.
Where
you have to go like, catch the monkeys from Ape Escape. Like, it's just their models. It's not like they have made them look like Metal Gear.
That would be terrifying if they made it look like Metal Gear Monkey.
Yeah, God, so frightening. But no, it's in Subsistence specifically, not the original.
That's right.
But you go and get the monkeys, just like Ape Escape, and then you get banana. Question from Novachild. They asked, is it good for people who don't like stealth or action or weirdness? This is about Metal Gear Solid 3 in general.
Probably not.
Probably not.
Probably not. That is probably like 95% of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think there might be, like, if you really love like a cinematic story or like the Cold War, you might be able to get over those things, but you really need to like those things, I think, to enjoy this game, or at least not have an aversion to them.
Yes. Yeah. There's a difficulty slider that I think does make the game pretty accessible if you don't really want to struggle with it that much. Like, I think very easy. It's like if you get seen, if you just like move between a location, the alarm is like not on anymore. And so like, you know, if you're not super into stealth or action, that's totally fine. But there's no difficulty slider for the weirdness.
Yeah,
Metal Gear, and like that is, I think, one of the things that makes it great. And so like, if that's something you're allergic to, this game will probably not be very fun because it's in almost all of it.
I would say that maybe this, I don't know. It's hard to say if this game is less weird than the others.
I think a little bit. Like, definitely 2. 2 is bizarre and strange and definitely not as weird as 4 either. 5, I'm not sure about just because I haven't played it as much. That one seems more of just like, this is a video game compared to the other 4 here. But like, this one and 1, I think, are the more restrained versions of this kind of game.
I think I'd agree. 1 and this one are the least weird, but they're still saying it's less weird than the other ones is really not saying that much.
Yes, yeah. AJ, producer of Into the Aether and co-host of .zip, asked, we used to be a country. And by that, I mean, games used to have manuals that were fun to read and give you insight on how to play the game.
Oh.
For MGS specifically, I remember there was a whole comic in the beginning that taught you the basics of the game. Do you feel like not having a physical manual to reference impeded your progress or hindered your enjoyment at all? Impeded, sorry, not impended.
I was about to say that's a fun word.
Yeah.
So I played this on the Switch. Actually, I got the Legacy Collection or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And they allow you to access this comic book online. So you can go to the options, and then there's an online portion that says like, oh, do you want to access the manual? And you say yes.
Yeah.
And it takes you to a website where you can interact with this same comic book. And it gives you a pretty detailed rundown of all the controls and everything, because the game really does not give you a whole lot. It gives you the basics, but doesn't give you the things that really make this game more of an experience. As far as stealth espionage action goes. If I didn't have the wherewithal to realize I need to poke around and find this, it probably would have impeded my ability to enjoy this game. And I don't really think I looked at it when I had the original one growing up. But I do think that it is not crucial, but very important to making you a adept spy in this game to really get the full description of how you can control a character.
I didn't have this manual this time. I am sure that I had it the first go around, but I mean, I wasn't impeded just because like I remembered how to play these games and we've been playing them like recently. So I mostly just remembered the controls, but we have definitely had the experience on this show of playing through these games that are like much older. And I'm like, I am so positive there was so much missing information that was in the manual that we just didn't have, you know?
It's gone with the wind.
Like Ogre Battle 64 strikes me as a game that probably had like a 40-page manual that we did not see, you know?
It was a game that came with a book, actually.
Yeah. And like half of me mourns the loss of manuals because it is this like kind of cool little piece of physical art sometimes that like gets you hype for the game, but it is like a neat way to represent like a tutorialization in a game. Yeah. And so like the physical part of having that is kind of a bummer to me, in the way that like, you know, people talk about like, man, I wish zines were still a thing. How I, you know, discovered local music was through these zines and shit. But also, I think the thing that they've been forced to do in place of that is just make good tutorials. Sure. You know? There was a period of time where it was just like, we're just going to take what's in the manual and put it in the video game. Yeah. Of like, here's 100 text boxes, or like a tutorial that takes you an hour before you play the game. But I think that for the most part, that kind of stuff has been pretty, you know, not ironed out completely, because like there's still kind of tough tutorialization, but you see pretty good tutorials in games a lot more often that are like either teaching you the game in a more intelligent way, or teaching it to you via like story beats, you know, like the snowball fight in The Last of Us 2 being a thing of like kind of teaching you how to take cover and throw and like hit people and shit like that. So
had to get creative with it.
Yeah. So part of me is like, oh, I miss my manuals, but also like maybe this is for the better anyway.
Yeah. There's a definite nostalgia to a manual. Like
absolutely.
I distinctly remember getting in a car after buying a game from GameStop, taking the shrink wrap off, and then opening it up and just reading the manual before I got home. Yes. That's an experience.
It's also an experience specifically for a child, because like, if I was an adult, I wouldn't be reading the manual in the car. I would go home and probably just pop the disc in.
Buy a Tesla, dude.
Yeah. Drive me home, Elon. I need to read my gaming zine.
That is probably why he made them have self-driving abilities.
God.
Gamers have to read their manuals, bro.
Matt, host of Can't Let It Go, asked, is the series on the whole so tied to the hardware the original games were built for that modernizing and re-releasing those games doesn't do much to actually preserve anything?
So like, is it so intrinsically tied to being a PS2 game? Yeah,
that like re-releasing it now isn't, it's not re-releasing that game. It's re-releasing the version that they have made in 2024. You know?
Gotcha. I see what you're saying. Interesting question.
I think in the case of Delta, definitely. That's definitely a new game, right? Like it is not the same game. And like some of I think this one specifically, it has some of the stuff where like some of those buttons were pressure sensitive. And so like, you know, if you're using CQC on the original PS2 controller, if you press really hard on circle, it's going to do something different than pressing a little bit on it. And so just the physical experience of doing that is like changing how you're playing the game.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I think that in my ideal world, right, there would be the original versions of these games readily available for people to play, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you wanted to play just straight up Metal Gear Solid 1, no added bells or whistles on your Switch, you could do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they re-release it with like some quality of life stuff, which is kind of what the parts of the collection are, right?
Yeah.
Like they have, made sure that you can control the camera in the third one.
That was already there though.
It was in Subsistence, but not like the original OG version,
No. Yeah.
And so like I like when that stuff happens because I think that there is a contingent of people who play games that like might be a little put off by some of those earlier decisions, like just the experience of playing the game, or like, I can't move the camera, that kind of stuff, like I think is prohibitive to some people playing the game. And I want more people to play the game. So, maybe there is a 1.2 version that they labeled. Again, this is in a perfect world. Like, this is the 1.2 version. If you want to play 1.0, you can buy it for $10 on Steam or, on the Switch or whatever. And like, that is exactly the form that it came out in when it was released.
Yeah.
But, in the absence of that, I think like this is probably close enough.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously you have the sort of like remake stuff like in Delta where it's like, this is a whole new experience.
That's a
totally
different
new game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say that I started playing this on my PS3, the original. I played the PS2 version on my PS3, and then I played, which is Subsistence. I played Subsistence.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got it on the Switch, and I played that one, which is also essentially just an HD version of Subsistence. They didn't really add a whole lot.
Yeah.
What I saw, they gave you the option to play like different versions of the game. But for the most part, it's just the original MGS3.
Yeah.
But what I would say in as far as like the Subsistence version versus the original version, I think the Subsistence version is a good way of showing people maybe who are adventurous the benefits of the stationary camera, because I do think there are a couple times in the game where you are better off using the stationary camera, the original camera, than you are using the third person camera. You can get a better sense of where the enemies are. People don't pop up behind you randomly as much as compared to if you use the third person camera. And there's some scenes of the game, especially like the motorcycle ride at the end, that I think are kind of really made worse by the new camera. And I think it's much more enjoyable and cinematic, and shows you like the creator's original intent better with the original version of the camera.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's an interesting question. And I think that you have to give people the choice to try both.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's really what it comes down to, of, not necessarily that it's like a restriction of the hardware from the PS2 era that caused, the need to do a stationary camera. But I think more of just Kojima's preference for controlling how things are, how a scene is structured. Right.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And I think that like, depending on how closely they remake 3 in Delta might give us a better answer to this too, because if they keep it totally the same as far as like the level design goes, I think that might not work totally perfectly, just because like sometimes the camera is sort of opinionated about where it wants to be. And so like the gameplay might not be quite as fun if you're putting the enemies in the same spot, but your camera's in a totally different spot than it was before, So we'll see.
We'll see.
Cameron asked, if there was something you could port back from a later entry in the series, what would it be?
From a later entry?
Yeah, so like, I guess, conceptually you could port something from 3 to 1 or from 5 to 2 or whatever.
I mean, just for ease, for quality of life, like the active camo from 4 and 3 would be pretty sweet.
Very, very easy, yeah.
Very easy. But then I also like the Fulton recovery
device
it's very
from
good. 5, and they have it in 3 too, just very briefly in the beginning of the game. It's not something you can use, but it's just like a cinematic story element. But I just like attaching things to it and just seeing them get whisked away so fast. It's just funny to me.
It's really funny, and it's so video gamey the way that it happens. Like, because conceptually it's you attach this hook and a helicopter picks these people up, but like it happens immediately. Like the moment you press triangle or whatever, they just fly into the sky.
It's a balloon with a hook and then a helicopter, or no, I think is it a plane? I think it's a jet. Comes by and just Takes them away immediately.
In Peace Walker, it's a helicopter.
It's a helicopter in Peace Walker? Okay.
Yeah, but in 5, maybe it's a jet in that one. God, I don't know. I mean, like, I would love some cones, some vision cones in 3.
Oh,
but
Chase loves his vision cones.
I love the vision cones, but I think that also might break some of the stealthier parts.
D-Dog?
Need D-Dog in all my video games. I mean, like, I would be interested to see what a full-blown, totally different remake of one of the earlier games would look like in the style of something like 5. I don't think that would work very well, and I think it would be a worse video game. But I would be interested to see what that looks like, right? Of like, if you're doing it in 1, like, what does a very longer, almost open world approach to Shadow Moses look like?
That could be interesting.
Because I don't really know, but also I think part of the enjoyment of those games is the linearity and the kind of concise nature of the story. So I don't think it would be very good. But
that's a new ass game at that point.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's a Final Fantasy VII Rebirth kind of deal there, where it's like, this is a different thing entirely. I mean, I love the face changer in 4, where like Snake can like change who he looks like at any moment.
Sure.
Especially when he changes his face to look like younger Snake, which is like just hilarious to me.
So spooky.
Yeah, it's really, really fun. So, yeah, maybe that. I don't know. It's a good question though.
Ooh, last one I would say.
Yeah.
If you could, so when you replay MGS3, you can have the boss's Patriot as a weapon, and it just annihilates people.
Yes.
But what if you could have the boss's horse as well, like the horse in MGS5?
I would love it if the horse was also a stealth mechanic, like it crouched down whenever you crouch down.
You can hide behind it. You can pretend that it's like dying or something, and someone will come over and you just pop out and shoot him.
It's a good horse. It's a good horse. FullMetalSteve had asked, this is now the second time in a row that the series has switched up its lead protagonist. So in your mind, does Naked Snake stack up against the original Solid Snake and also Raiden?
I'd say he feels more like a complete character than either of them, personally.
Yes. I think he feels like a more complete character than Solid did in 1.
Yeah.
And I think that was partially just like, that game is not as big as this one. Like, they didn't have the tech to make it as big.
Yeah.
But I also agree that like I understand Naked Snake's arc a lot more than Raiden's, you know, like Raiden was kind of a trip. All that said, I like what Raiden did. I like what he represents, you know, of like
the
kind
switch
of this,
up and Hideo making the gamer look at himself in the mirror.
Yeah, the kind of the reflective nature of Raiden.
Once again, you love the meta of it.
I do love the meta of it. I sure do. And also like, you know, in comparing all this, you do end up playing as the original Solid Snake in 4. And like, it's possible that it's because it's just the arc of the game, but I was kind of bummed out playing as Snake in that one. And I think it's largely because he's on borrowed time in 4. Like, it's clear that he is aging very quickly because of Fox Die. And so I'm like, this is kind of a bummer playing as Solid Snake in this game. But yeah, I think you're right that the arc of Naked Snake in this one is like very complete.
Yeah. I'd say it's the most compelling and complete personal story arc that you get in any one single MGS game.
Like his arc and his like story is aided by the other games that he's in, you know, with Peace Walker and then 5 as well. But you get the whole story that this game wants to tell in this one. It's not like it ends on like, we'll see. Yeah. To be continued. It's like, no, he's disillusioned with the government now. Like, that's his thing.
Yeah. And he definitely does feel like a different character than Solid Snake.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. He's like a little bit more bright-eyed and bushy-tailed than Snake is in Metal Gear Solid 1. Because by the point in Metal Gear Solid 1, Solid Snake has like retired and is like, I'm done doing this shit.
Yeah, because he had Metal Gear 1 and 2 already under his belt. Yeah. And so like he is not as down with the system as Naked Snake is in this one. And yeah, despite the fact that they're voiced by David Hayter and look very similar, they do feel like different people for sure. Yeah, they act and respond differently to situations.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so we got 2 questions kind of rolled into one here.
Great.
The first is from Doogragdaba, I think is how you say it. I hope I'm pronouncing that even in the ballpark of right. They said, what do you hope the remake retains and changes from the original? And AJ also asked kind of a similar question. Chase, you and I talked a while ago on an async bonus, rest in peace, about the Delta announcement. Considering the Master Collection exists, do you feel like the game could do for a remake, or does it still feel capital bad? Capital B bad.
Capital B bad.
So kind of similar ideas here of like, what do we want in the remake? What do we not want? And then like, does the remake feel kind of tough at this point?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that?
Well, what I would want from the remake, and I think what they're going to give us, is a little bit of a more modernized control scheme, better, more clear graphics, get rid of the Flecktarn tone of the whole
Filter.
game,
Yeah.
the Flecktarn filter. It just already seems so much easier to see things in this one. Definitely have to squint a little bit in the original to like understand if that is a tree or a person. And I think that is intentional, but still do it in a different way, I guess.
I saw some people on like threads being like, look at what we've lost. Look what they took from us in the way that they've updated this. I think that I think that the mid 2000s gray and brown scale is having a moment where some people are like, we used to be great. We used to be good.
Why?
That's also my reaction. And I think it's either having made it into nostalgia too hard, or having not grown up with it and being like, damn, look at how cool games used to look, because
so stylized.
I think that's the idea, that they're more stylized than they are now. But having gone through it, I'm like, thank God they did not keep the gray brown filter that they had on those games.
Yeah, the same reason you won't see me rocking a bucket hat now.
Yeah, despite the fact it's probably popular.
It's
right
super
now.
popular. They're super in, but ain't for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that there's some quality of life updates that can be made there. And I think just giving Snake more of the abilities, like at least in combat, that you get in 5, like rolling around on the ground instead of just being able to prone crawl back and forth and side to side.
Yeah.
I think that's what I'm really looking for from the remake. I want them to keep the voice lines the same. I don't need any new voice lines. And I think we talked about it a little bit already, but like changing some of the Ava stuff and just making that feel less bad and more nuanced and complex instead of just oogling.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they are just using the original voice acting for this game. Like they didn't re-record it.
Good.
Yeah, I think it's bizarre because they're kind of signaling like we are going to remake this pretty much to a T with some of it, and then stuff that is also not to a T with other stuff. So here's my thing in my freak world, in my
your freak world.
my if they're doing this crazy style remake, I would love the Final Fantasy VII remake treatment for this game. Of like,
just really do something different with it.
Really get in there and fuck some shit up. About like maybe the first 15 to half an hour is like exactly the same, but like weird shit starts happening. Like maybe some of the characters aren't in the right spot.
The Shagohod is actually Shadow the Hedgehog.
Yes, it's actually Shadow the Hedgehog who has a gun. or like, you know, Metal Gear Ray is in this one or something.
That fires nukes because he runs so fast. Hey, that's actually a little canonical.
Yeah, that's kind of not that far away from the real thing. Or like, yeah, but like eventually leading up to speaking to the kind of cyclical and repeating nature of the conflict that they were hammering on in this one, where like maybe you think you are playing as the original big boss, but it's somebody else in a different place, in like a different location that is also being, you know, misled and mishandled. Again, just because so much of the game is about this like deception that the government is doing to Snake here, that like I think there's so many opportunities for wild and wacky shit there that could still retain a lot of the same locations and beats from the first one. But, you know, what if the boss is the person who is actually in charge of the GRU, and like Ocelot is the one who is defecting from the United States, or, you know, anything like that they could just kind of like play around with in a way that like hopefully wouldn't introduce multiple timelines or something, but just maybe speaks to the idea that like this is a thing that has happened and other people have been manipulated, and like this, that like the boss is right, that these kind of conflicts have repercussions in other ways.
Sure.
So, you know, what would I change? In my ideal world, almost everything, but like, you know, make it look cool. Definitely.
I was about to say, that sounds more like a reimagining than a remake at that point.
Yes, it's kind of a different thing rather than just like a visual update.
Sure.
What would I want to keep the same? I really hope that they retain the weird and wacky shit that goes on in this game. Like, I think if you took a lot of that out, it would take some of the soul out of this game in a way that feels bad.
Absolutely.
Like if they're like, oh, when the bosses die, they don't explode now. That would be like, you can't do that. Look how they've massacred my boy.
It's just an explosion. There's no arrows. There's no bees.
Yeah. The pain just uses a gun now. Like, can you imagine?
It's a
This
gun
was
that
such
has
a
like the
bummer.
venom of a murder
Yes.
hornet in it. Oh, that'd be so
Yeah.
lame. Oh,
It would be a
man.
huge bummer. Yeah. I don't think they will, but like, I think you have to retain that weirdness.
I think they're really going to try to keep it the same from everything I've seen so far.
Yeah. It seems that way.
If they don't have Ocelot's little cute Ocelot, I'm going to be very sad and upset
They
about
have
that.
to.
They got to keep
There's
that.
yeah. I feel like the stuff that they might take out is like something that you would never notice. Like
Sure.
some Kodak call that they're like, we don't need this in here.
We don't need
you
this
know?
codec call. We don't need this specific goat in this area.
Yeah. Yeah.
Although someone probably on Reddit will complain that they took out their favorite goat.
Game is unplayable.
Unplayable now.
To AJ's question about like, does the remake still feel kind of bad? A little. I like.
Wait, why does it feel bad?
I think largely just because Hideo is not involved here.
Okay.
And the fact that like they're not getting the voice actors and actresses and paying them and doing it again and being like, hey, let's, make this good. They're just kind of like, we're just going to reuse it and throw another skin on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's underselling some of the work that they're doing here. They've clearly like worked their asses off to get this game out.
Yeah.
And like the footage I think I've seen of that since then kind of makes me think that there's a lot here that is substantial.
Yeah.
The Hideo thing still sucks.
Mm-hmm.
It is unlike really any other relationship with a game that I know of or can think of, like if Nintendo was suddenly like, hey, Shigeru Miyamoto is not the guy we want him to be, and then kicked him to the curb and then remade, fucking Ocarina of Time without him, I would be like, this kind of sucks,
Sure.
like it kind of feels bad. But I like at the same time, I think this is like a good idea. I think a lot of people like this game and it might revitalize some of the interest in the series in general. So like, I like that part of it. And Hideo has a lot of respect in the industry. It's not like this dude is like not making video games anymore. And so I'm, it's kind of a luxury that they didn't just like ruin him by throwing him out of Konami.
Yeah.
Because there was
he's not
enough people
destitute
there.
on the street now.
No. And like is kind of one of the bigger names in the game industry. And so it's, I don't like the fact that he was so like kind of disrespected here, but I'm not this guy's like mom. It's not my job to be offended for him. But I understand that it feels bad, and it just feels bad in the way that like corporate relationships often feel bad. So
yeah,
yes and no, AJ. I don't know. Who knows? I think it's honestly probably going to come down to each person how they feel about it.
Yeah. Here's my question for you now.
Yeah.
So the remake feels bad to you because Kojima's not involved, and yet you said that you would like for the remake to really change almost completely how the game is structured. That feels better to you to completely make something different without Kojima?
Yes.
But still call it Snake Eater at the same time?
I mean, maybe you don't. Maybe you just call it Metal Gear Solid Delta, right? Like you don't mention the Snake Eater thing. It's just Delta now.
I could see that.
Just because I think that would be leaning, because then you can have a conversation in the game about the legacy of the game, right? Like in the same way that Final Fantasy VII Remake did, where they're talking about Final Fantasy VII in the video game, not directly, but they're commenting on it. And you could do the same thing here of like, how does it feel to kind of like stand in the footsteps of somebody who you think that you like idolized, but now you're doing something totally different? That could be really interesting. And I think it would reflect the people who worked on it a little more rather than just like, making money off of the ideas of a person who they kind of kicked to the curb.
Sure.
Do
you feel like they are not touching the voice lines out of respect for Kojima?
I don't know. I don't know what the motivation is there. It could be that, but to me that reads more as like, let's not totally open a huge can of worms by doing the entire thing over again. Plus, like, I think most of the voice acting is pretty good in the first one. Like, there's not a lot of lines where I'm like, ooh, that sounded stilted or weird. So, like, most of them are like, that's pretty good. It sounds all very convincing.
Yeah, it's stylized.
Yes, yeah.
I would say more than anything else. Yeah.
TK asked, have you eaten a snake? Would you eat a snake? Do you think it would give you HP? I have not eaten a snake.
Have I eaten a snake? This is a great question. I feel like the answer is yes, but I can't remember the specific time or place. I think it was maybe in jerky form. No, you know what I'm thinking of? I've eaten alligator. I ate alligator sausage when I was in New Orleans.
I feel like you sometimes tell me like, hey, I ate the weirdest animal recently. None of it's like below board, but I feel like you reach for some of the menu items that I'm like, I am not brave enough for this.
I'm here for an experience, baby.
I have not eaten snake. I think I would try snake.
I'd try snake for sure.
If somebody was like, this is really good, actually, I would probably try it. Cause like I've tried like snails and shit in like France and whatnot and like frogs' legs and stuff. Snails specifically, pretty fucking good.
They
just so buttery and delicious. I was pretty into that. So if someone was like, a snake is actually good, I might try it. I'm not chowing down crazy style like Snake is in this game, just biting right into their abdomen or whatever.
Yeah.
But like, you know, if it got a little clean piece of meat, like, yeah, sure, I'd probably try it.
Yeah. I think if I ever saw it on a menu, I'd be very tempted to try it.
Yeah.
Very tempted.
Do you think it would give you HP? I mean, any food that doesn't come immediately back up gives me HP.
This is true. Yeah, it definitely gives me health.
I'm always restoring my hit points.
I think if I was eating snake, though, I'd have to say after every bite, that's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
I want some more.
Just video game stuff.
Yeah. People from other tables just looking at me.
What is happening over there?
What's wrong with this man?
Final question from Ponk. Ponk had asked, in Metal Gear Solid 3, the end can be defeated via a unique method, advancing the console clock so he dies of old age. If Chase and David were bosses, what would be your definitive article name? And what would be your unique method of defeat be?
Ooh, wow.
I think that I'm going to give you one.
Oh, you're going to give me one?
I think I'm going to give you one.
You're going to get... Can I give you one then?
If you have one in the chamber, feel free. But like, I feel like it's much easier for me to see what your boss name would be.
Okay.
Then I can think of my own, you know?
Okay, sure.
I think that David's recall is unbelievable. And so like, you have the ability to like in full techno color see a memory from like 20 years ago and be like, here's the book that was on the shelf at that moment or something.
This is what we were listening to on the radio. It smelled of lilac.
In a way that I've got like vibes from some of my memories from that era, you know? And so like something around that. I think the memory is a little bit too on the nose. So like maybe the echo or the recall or something like that. Echo. It seems, I like the echo. It seems cool, fun. Right? Like, cause like, you know, you echo, you hear it, and it comes back at you, right? You know, what would be your unique method of defeat be?
Can I offer one if I'm the echo?
Yeah, please.
Maybe two different ones.
Okay.
Either you have to like delete the save file, like a fake deletion, because then I can't recall anything.
Oh, that's good. Right? Yeah.
Wasn't there like a microphone peripheral for the PS2?
In one of these,
we'll say for the iToy, maybe, right?
Sure. Yeah.
You have to like hook the iToy up or something, and then just like repeat everything I'm saying.
Just mock
echo
you.
It.
Oh yeah, true. Or try and force you to memorize the marketing material for Beats by Dre.
Oh yeah, that would send me over the edge. That is my second origin story of my villain arc.
It might work too because you've got such good memory. It's like taking up precious space.
It sure
you know,
is.
like that. Like I'm sure you remember at least a few of the bullet points from that fucking pair of headphones.
I try not to.
Yes, yeah.
There's a couple gigabytes in my brain being taken up by fucking Beats by Dre.
Yes, yeah. I like that. I like the echo. I think the echo is good.
The echo. I like it. I like it. Thank you. All right, your turn.
Yeah. I don't have any off the top of my head.
Can I give you one? It's my turn to give you one.
Yeah.
So Chase is a very compassionate person.
Oh, interesting.
He loves to listen, and hear people's feelings and emotions.
That is true.
So not to be too on the nose about it, but maybe you'd be the heart.
Oh, yeah. That's very good. The heart or the ear.
The ear. You just have one giant, like, chromed out ear.
Yes, yeah.
The ear. Let me hear your emotions, young one.
Like it's very hard to sneak quietly around me or something.
And how do we kill you in a unique way?
It depends on which one we're going with here. With the ear, I think probably like overload, like way too much sound, you know, like something extremely loud.
Sure.
Because like also, you know, some of my sensory feelings, when there's a very loud noise, I'm like, that sucked very badly for me. You know, it feels bad. If we're going with the heart, I don't know. I mean, it could be similar to yours of just like overload of like too much and none of it's real, you know, like it's it's just watching episodes of Friends over and over and over again. Because my existential crisis would kick on and I'm like, I'm not hearing any real people. It's just episodes about nothing. And then I would, explode or something.
It's not actual humans. It's just nothing.
It's just Joey, the void.
It is Joey the Void. Wow. I like that.
Oh, that's another good idea for a horror story in October.
Joey the Void.
Or just, like the Void Walkers, aka Friends.
A place devoid of emotion. New
Yeah, it's
York
just
City, circa the 90s.
The darkness, you can stare into it, but be careful. It might be staring back.
Central Park.
Those are both good.
Yeah.
I'm either the ear or the heart, and you're maybe the echo.
The echo. Now I have a follow-up question now.
Okay. Yeah.
If when we are killed by a snake,
What flies out?
what explodes out of us?
I don't know. I mean, probably at this point, like video game consoles or something.
Sure.
A podcasting mic.
For me, it would probably be donuts.
Oh, yeah, sure enough. You love a donut.
I'm often full of donuts, but if I'm still the echo, then maybe like a bunch of hard drives.
Yeah, true. Just like perfect recall devices.
Yeah.
Oh, man. That's good. I like donuts, though. Donuts is fun.
Donuts and hard drives.
If we're going with the food one, it's pizza for me, baby. Can't get enough of the stuff.
Absolutely.
And then, God, what's the other one? Just like,
Just earwax for the ear.
yeah, earwax and the phone number of a couple of therapists that I think are pretty good. In case you need some while I'm gone. Wow. Thank you for everybody who sent in questions. Love a question segment. It's so easy, so nice to just answer a question about a video game.
Good times.
Because that's the hard part of generating an idea, is the first part where you got to think about it. But if someone just comes up with a fun idea and I can just answer that, oh, me, oh,
Easy
bye.
peasy.
That is easy peasy.
Easy peasy.
Hey, thank you for listening all the way here.
Yeah.
If you have made it here.
This is got to be our longest episode, huh?
Maybe. I think 2 was pretty long. MGS 2 is pretty long, but this one's a long one. So we will see how this stacks up. And I usually you and I take a break about halfway through recording these episodes for like 10, 15 minutes. That has not been happening in either of these. So it's pretty much just the straight up runtime.
Yep.
It's what it's going to be.
Yep.
First one was like an hour 50 and this one is also an hour 50. So listener, you can see how much we cut out by how much is remaining there. Probably not much, because I usually just keep most of the shit in there. But yeah, thank you so much for listening. We love doing these series, and it takes some prep time. So thank you for your patience while we plodded along with playing these games and finishing them too, because I would feel weird if I didn't finish MGS3 all the way through before I talked about it.
Yes, absolutely.
Despite the fact that some of the finer details are lost on me, it's still got to play, still got to feel it.
Still gotta feel it. Gotta get them vibes.
Yeah, so I will spare everybody our normal outros and just say thank you for listening to this, and we appreciate you. And I don't know, Metal Gear Solid 3 for life.
Yeah, snake it up.
Snake it up, snake it down,
Snake it all around
snake it down
to Snaky Town.
to Metal Gear Solid Town.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll see you on the next one of these for, I think, Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker.
Peace Walker. Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Which is canonically not right after, but after this game.
Yes, because that came out before 4, didn't it?
Yeah, 4 was 2008. I think Peace Walker was 2010.
So do we do 4 first then?
I don't know, because it's so closely related to this one that I feel like it would make sense if we just did it.
Also,
now.
Chase doesn't want to play MGS4 on his PS3.
Oh God, I don't want to pull that big beefy boy out of the closet.
It's a big beefy boy. I get it. Yeah, I'm fine with either.
Okay, all right. Well, let's plan on Peace Walker until something else pops up.
Sounds good.
Thank you, everybody. We appreciate you, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.
Bye.
Don't be afraid to fall. I'm falling in love again. Falling in love again. How can you say goodbye when we haven't even had a chance?